This kid is the most insane prodigy born in the last 3 centuries. Even the second he entered this world, Dale did not shed a single tear. His mother had to pour out every ounce of her strength, and only then did the newborn let out a wail. By the time he hit age 8, he was already playing chess while everyone else played checkers. Weaving multiple elemental spells together mid-combat was literally light work for him, just as easy as breathing. His ceiling was so insanely high that at barely 10 years old, his dad threw him straight onto the bloody front lines of a massive kingdom war. Backed by his son's god-tier power, rival forces got squashed like abs. Legends of his sheer ruthlessness started spreading like wildfire, becoming the ultimate nightmare for anyone facing him. Flash forward, a fierce noble girl from a foreign land, Charlotte Orelhart, got dragged into House Saxon. This turf was ruled by Duke Alan Saxon, literally the most terrifying necromancer and dark mage on the entire continent, and the absolute boss of the Black Tower. Showing up at his grim fortress to beg for a spot as a lowly servant was a massive slap in the face, especially for a girl fiercely proud of her elite warrior bloodline. There was zero chance she was bowing down to some punk kid. Fuming with rage, she straight up challenged the boy to a death match. She was dead set on flexing her blade and proving she outclassed everyone. After all, she carried the legendary blood of the divine blade. Charlotte threw every crazy move in her arsenal at him. But even with Dale holding back and wielding a basic sword, she could not lay a scratch on him. And keep in mind, she was literally blasting him with full power aura strikes. Eating her first massive L, the girl broke down in tears, totally hopeless about how she would ever avenge her slaughtered family. Dale then looked down and dropped some heavy truth. You are weak and you lack raw power, but your talent, that is undeniable. Swear absolute loyalty to me, right now. Serve House Saxon, and I swear on, and I will personally back your bloody revenge against the monsters who burned your kingdom to the ground. Will she take the deal? And can Dale actually back up that flex? Let us rewind to where it all started. Enter our main guy, Han Sung. He barks at his battle buddy to get off the dirt so they can keep grinding forward. The exhausted soldier nods and struggles to his feet while Han Sung racks his weapon locking and loading. In this bleak reality, humanity has been locked in a bloodbath against nightmare monsters for literal decades. After endless grueling meat grinder battles, only a fraction of mankind is left breathing. But finally, Han Sung's ultimate target is staring him right in the face. Out of nowhere, a massive glowing magic glyph sparks up right under his boots. His eyes blow wide open. He is totally clueless about what is going down. Before he can even twitch, the vortex violently sucks him in, and he blips out of existence. Free falling through a trippy void, a booming voice rattles his skull, ordering him to answer the summon. Blazing golden threads tightly coil around his throat. As his blurry vision snaps back into focus, our guy realizes he is locked down in a totally alien dungeon, surrounded by a creepy squad of hooded cultists, just staring intensely. Glancing down at his wrists, he is strapped up in some high-tech, glowing magic cuffs. An ancient-looking dude steps out of the shadows, drops his hood, and formally welcomes the hero from a parallel dimension. Brushing off the fact that he just literally kidnapped him, the geezer casually asks. Freaking out, Han Sung snaps, screaming to know where the hell he is. He barks that he is supposed to be back in Korea, deep in the trenches of a massive war zone. Annoyed by the yelling, the old man just flicks his wrist and shoots a silencing hex straight at him. Our hero screams out in pure, agonizing torment. The old guy coldly explains that the master-slave binding oath is now live. He smugly adds that the spell will chill out and stop frying his insides as long as he acts like a good boy. Blinking through tears of pure rage, his entire body feeling like it is on fire, Han Sung realizes he is completely cornered. The bald geezer casually snatches up a blade and repeats his insane demand. Butcher the Demon King and save the Empire. He carelessly chucks the heavy steel right at the young warrior's feet and drops the ultimate bait. Pull this off and you get a one-way ticket back to your own world. The cultists glare at him with glowing eyes, aggressively waiting for his yes. Han Sung speed reads the messed up room, calculates his survival odds, and realizes biting the bullet is his only play here. And just like that, our guy was isekai'd into a brutal fantasy wasteland, forced to grind as an Empire's chained-up champion. The dude grounded out non-stop, breaking his back carrying the team and leading an insane amount of deadly dungeon raids. He was a one-man slaughterhouse. 3 years vanished, then 5, then an agonizing 10. He literally threw his entire youth into the meat grinder just to hunt down the Demon King of Valro. But flash forward to now. After finally clearing the main quest, this bald snake drops a massive bomb. There is a brand new hidden objective. Absolutely heated, Han Sung snarls that this was straight up not the deal they made. The shady elder smirks, claiming that securing the Empire's future takes way more than just dusting the Demon King. Apparently there are still rebel factions blocking their total takeover, and every last one of them needs to be wiped off the map. He slaps a crumpled bounty poster onto the stone wall. Staring back from the parchment is the cocky, smirking mug of Battle a Rogue from the Night Kingdom of Teutonia, now flagged as their next kill target. The old geezer begs the hero to push through just one last time, and a leashed hound with a shock collar around his neck has literally zero choice but to obey. Han Sung drags himself into yet another bloodbath, questioning if this endless nightmare will ever actually wrap up. After a lightning-fast clash, he manages to slash his blade across Batel. Bleeding out, the rival scoffs, calling his opponent an absolute fool. Han Sung fires back that his hands were tied, casting his eyes downward, as he mutters a heavy apology for the strike. Staring back with dead serious eyes, Batel tells him to save the apologies, because he is about to get thrown out like garbage too. Once the brutal mission is checked off, our main character genuinely thinks he is finally headed back home. But right before he can even pop a mental celebration, the invisible leashes choking his neck are violently yanked back. A bearded commander steps up, showering the otherworldly hero with fake praise while mercilessly tugging the threads, before plunging his massive blade straight through Han Sung's gut. Through the hazy pain, Han Sung recognizes that face. It is Count Brandenburg. The Count smirks, claiming the kid played his role perfectly as the Empire's ultimate attack dog, and speaking as the Grand General and Sacred Knight. He tips his hat to those efforts. Right then, the bitter reality hits like a truck. They literally never planned to send him back. Driving the steel in deeper, the Count casually drops that they did not even have to go through all this trouble, since a rabid hound only knows how to snap its jaws. Han Sung crashes hard into the dirt, slipping into darkness, as Brandenburg coldly bids him goodbye. Fading out entirely, the kid realizes he low-key saw this betrayal coming from a mile away. His last flickering thoughts forge a blood oath. He will permanently etch this absolute disrespect into his soul, and he swears to make this wretched empire pay by burning it all to the ground. Hours later, beneath that exact same night sky, one soul faded into the shadows forever, while another sparked into existence for the very first time. A stunning duchess leans over her fresh-born baby, but the infant's brain kicks into overdrive, immediately realizing he has absolutely no clue who this lady is. Fighting through the fog, fragments of his past life come rushing back. The imposing guy standing right next to her was the most legendary necromancer and dark mage across the entire continent, the infamous Duke Saxon. That meant this crib had to be parked right in the Empire's heavily restricted magic headquarters, Necropolis, the very ground where the menacing black tower pierces the sky. Right before biting the dust, Han Sung had secretly stashed a resurrection stone deep in his gear, but the exact vessel he would respawn into was totally a roll of the dice. He hit the absolute jackpot. He just spawned as the eldest heir of Saxon, one of the most overpowered and elite nobles in the entire empire. This time around, our guy literally respawned with a diamond spoon in his mouth. The master plan was instantly locked in. Level up, master the dark arts, and shred every single backstabber who did him dirty. Panicking slightly, Saxon clocks that his newborn heir is not making a single peep. A midwife shuffles over, reassuring them the tiny guy looks perfectly healthy, just unusually chill. Obviously, Han Sung is a full-grown warrior trapped in a tiny frame. He is definitely not going to bawl his eyes out over nothing. The midwife squints closer, pointing out his steady breathing, and insisting there is zero reason to stress out. Still, the Duke murmurs, wondering if a silent newborn might actually be some kind of cursed red flag. The lady casually suggests that the quickest fix is just giving the baby a few gentle slaps on the rear. This exact scenario leaves Han Sung feeling incredibly pressed and utter. Despite the smacks, the infant stays completely quiet, forcing the proud parents to decide. The little dude totally inherited Saxon's fierce toughness. Flashing a gorgeous warm smile, the mother gently asks to scoop him up. Han Sung braces his mind for a second round of pure embarrassment, but instead of treating him like a fragile doll, she starts softly tracing his tiny features. The very second this young mother's glowing, tender touch brushed against his skin, something deep inside his battered soul actually cracked open. Han Sung searched his traumatic past, trying to pinpoint the last time he experienced a feeling like this. Not agonizing pain, not bloody battle scars, just pure, unfiltered love. Her soothing hands practically radiated a warmth he hadn't felt in years, maybe even literal decades. Right then and there, his iron walls completely shattered. He wailed, genuinely, pouring his heart out exactly the way a newborn is meant to. The scene cuts to a bright morning as the elite couple rolls out of bed. Saxon mutters to himself, totally mind-blown by how insanely fast time moves. It has already been 8 whole years since little Dale crashed into their world. The blonde beauty asks if their kid is still aggressively grinding through his massive book collection, pointing out he has been glued to those pages since he was barely 4. Flashing a grin, the Duke brags that the boy is already showing major hype for the magical arts, but his wife instantly flips the entire mood of the room. She grabs her husband's face, forcing him to meet her eyes, and demands to know if he remembers his absolute vow to never teach their kid the dark arts of necromancy. Saxon quickly nods his confirmation, letting her finally release a massive, relieved sigh. He then smoothly suggests they should pivot their energy toward hyping up the kid's birthday surprise for tomorrow. Suddenly, a chaotic crash violently snaps their chat. A frantic maid bursts through the doors, practically screaming for the master. Young Dale is locked in the study. The panicked couple sprints down the hall and discovers the boy sprawled on the floor, completely engulfed in a glowing magic circle, projecting straight out of his open book. His mom rushes over, absolutely terrified, desperately asking if he injured himself. Dale instantly waves it off, claiming he is totally fine. Saxon locks in, instantly catching the heavy scent of raw mana sparking in the room, and realizes, completely shell-shocked, that his 8-year-old prodigy just successfully awakened the mana core, vibrating inside his own veins. Dale immediately starts sweating, scrambling to cook up a quick excuse, terrified they might actually catch on to his reincarnation secret. But the Duke is not glaring with suspicion at all. He is beaming with absolute pride, playfully ruffling his son's hair. He proudly smirks, bragging that this wild display is exactly what he'd expect from his only gripe: he can't pass down the dark art of necromancy himself. Flashing a warm yet firm smile, his mom nudges Dale back to his room so the maids can scrub away the chaos. As our tiny protagonist slips away, Alan calls out to his wife. A light bulb just went off for the ultimate birthday gift. Fast forward a bit, and Dale's big bash has every single noble from the Black Duke's entire domain packing the estate. The VIP crowd is absolutely buzzing to spot the birthday boy, but tucked away in a second-floor hallway, miles away from the hype. Our guy is deep in his own head. It's honestly mentally draining knowing this massive crowd showed up, purely to flex for him. After spending his past life being treated like absolute dirt, all this royal pampering feels seriously bizarre. To make things worse, he's still stressing over that chaotic mishap from a few days back. His mana had completely spiraled out of control, triggered just by the lingering vibes of his past life as a hero. But facts are facts. This new body is practically hardwired for raising the dead. The smartest play here: convince his dad to mentor him. Dale figures he should just demand dark magic lessons as his ultimate gift, instead of some shiny, useless toy. Right on cue, his mom glides in, totally apologizing for keeping him waiting. She is absolutely slaying in this jaw-dropping gown, and she's rolling with a mysterious hooded VIP. Dale instantly catches on to this heavy aura, and questions who the stranger is. Turns out, it's a legendary elder from the Blue Magic Tower. Lady Sephia, the absolute brainiac elf, and an apex master of water magic. Elena drops the bomb. This powerhouse is officially Dale's new private tutor. Yep, his parents literally gifted him a top-tier magic coach for his birthday. The hidden agenda, crystal clear. Mom desperately wants her kid slinging water spells, locking down pure defense and crowd control. Shadow magic is a massive red flag. Flashing a super sweet smile, Lady Sephia requests a one-on-one chat with Dale. The duo pulls away from the crowd, and she spills the tea his folks strictly hired her for water magic. But she's already read him like a book. She knows the kid is low-key obsessed with a much darker craft. I mean, it's basically in his DNA. Why wouldn't the Black Duke's heir want to command armies of the undead? But here's the catch, and it's a rumor the entire empire knows. Back in the day, Elena was seriously to finally lock down her heart. He swore on his life that his twisted, shadowy legacy would die with him, never reaching the next generation. Literally on the day they tied the knot, every single creepy elder from the Black Tower ditched their black gear for solid white. This whole marriage was forged on that ironclad promise. So yeah, swaying Lady Elena's mind is going to be insanely tough. Sophia smirks, asking if the kid is actually down to be her student. Dale flips the script, questioning how a hardcore nature-loving elf isn't totally triggered by dark magic. That spicy question actually cracks her up. Sophia points out the so-called holy priests who constantly bend the rules to drag people back to life. A massive middle finger to Mother Nature herself. In her eyes, necromancy is literally the exact same vibe. Dale instantly clicks. Sophia is built way different from those stuck-up traditional elves. She might actually be the absolute goat of a mentor, hyped to grind. She casually drops that she already heard about the baby mana circle he accidentally sparked a few days prior. Mission 1. Take that tiny fragment, blow it up, and forge his very first fully functional circle. It's literally the backbone for casting any spell, ever. She instructs Dale to press his palm against his chest and zone in. A chaotic realm flooding with raw mana hits him like a truck, totally different from his past life. Unless you're some ancient god-tier dragon trying to juggle raw mana, will straight up destroy you. To actually filter and weaponize that raw energy, You absolutely need a mana ring glowing and spinning right around your core. Dale closes his eyes, mapping out the wild energy flow surging into his chest, hanging on to every single word his master says. Sophia throws up a warning sign, telling him to chill and take it slow. This grind usually eats up a whole month, so zero pressure. But then, Dale casually pops open his palm, revealing a glowing, swirling orb of pure energy. He casually asks, "Like this?" She completely freezes. A literal 8-year-old shouldn't be able to forge a core in less than 5 minutes. Snapping back, Sophia practically gasps, demanding to know if he can push spells through it. Dale shrugs. Let's find out. Back in his old life, he was locked into using brutal combat magic, fueled entirely by ancient tattoos carved into his skin. But this brand new body, it literally drinks mana like water. This means he isn't just stuck with water magic. He can unlock the entire skill tree. The glowing circle violently flares up as his focus hits maximum levels. A razor-sharp lethal ice spike materializes right between his tiny hands. Sophia's jaw practically hits the floor. 99% of the time the spell's form just violently shatters, while a newbie tries to compress and fire the mana. But this absolute menace locks onto a massive tree and just beams it. The thick trunk literally explodes into a shower of splinters. The impact was so crazy, so devastatingly sharp. It sliced clean through the solid wood like butter. That is absolutely not the kind of god-tier precision you'd expect from an 8-year-old kid. Eyes wide like saucers, Sophia stares at her pint-sized student. Dale just waves at her with a goofy, innocent smile, while her mind races, completely failing to hide her shock. What on earth is this monster kid? Sophia stays glued to the blasted, smoking tree stump, her brain furiously trying to process the absolute insanity she just witnessed. Sure, it was a literal starter spell, but the terrifying, flawless execution that was straight out of a Grandmaster's playbook. Meanwhile, Dale starts sweating, looking totally panicked, like he just broke the rules. Catching her breath, the wise elf turns back to him, slapping on a perfectly calm. To keep him from totally panicking, she bites her tongue. But inside, her mind is racing. Rotation, acceleration, compression. These are the absolute holy trinity of magic. Watching an 8-year-old kid pull off all three with literal pinpoint accuracy, it proves this boy is built totally different. Sophia totally plays it cool, waving it off as no big deal, but whispers that it all makes sense now. The Black Archmage carried way too much baggage. Cut to later, Sophia is chilling at a table with Saxon and Alan. Saxon looks absolutely furious with her choice, demanding to know why she's suddenly dropping Dale. The elf just takes a breath. She drops the bomb the exact second the young master unlocked his first circle. He fired off an attack spell with absolutely flawless form. That is unheard of for a kid barely out of diapers. The energy radiating off him mastered all three core principles. The boy's raw potential is off the charts. The Duke scowls, his eyebrows knitting together. He asks, even as an elite elder of the Blue Magic Tower, she still can't mentor him. Sophia takes a slow, dramatic sip of her tea before dropping the truth. It isn't about ability. Honestly, seeing that kind of flex only made her desperately want to take him under her wing. Alan is just staring, totally baffled, asking why she's walking away then. The elf keeps it straight, because the young master already has his eyes glued on a specific prize. And that prize, the forbidden dark arts of the Black Archmage. She knows all about that cursed book, and she's well aware of the heavy promise Saxon made to his late wife. But frankly, none of that gives a single person the right to completely railroad the future of a prodigy like Dale. Meanwhile, plastered against the other side of the heavy wooden door, Dale is eavesdropping on every single word. He misses a few whispers, but he knows damn well he is the main topic. He honestly never thought dropping his very first spell would leave Sophia this deeply shook. The takeaway is crystal clear. Moving forward, he has to keep his cards way closer to his chest. Suddenly, a voice snaps him right out of his thoughts. Dale's face lights up with a massive grin before he even spins around. It's his uncle Helmet. The massive guy chuckles, asking what his favorite nephew is sneaking around for. Dale totally dodges the question, immediately asking how his uncle has been holding up. Helmet bursts out laughing, yanking the kid into a giant bear hug, bragging that he's just been doing his job, holding down the fort for the Dukedom, absolutely shredding through grotesque monsters all over the territory. Dale's eyes sparkle as he asks if he was raiding the dungeons, but that bright smile completely fails to hide the raw anxiety bubbling underneath. You see, in this universe, dungeons and the absolute nightmares crawling out of them are basically the biggest threat wiping out any given region. Ever since the dark days of the Demon King, the devastation has been literally incalculable, leaving the knights with the brutal job of clearing out the hellholes he left behind. But for the Saxon dukedom, they are stuck in an absolute nightmare scenario. And the crazy part is the root cause is actually Dale himself. Back in his past life, he was the badass who actually decapitated the Demon King. And his grand prize, the Duke of Saxon, was gifted a massive chunk of fresh imperial territory, strapped with the miserable, bloody chore of wiping out the endless swarms infesting it. Dale clings a little tighter, begging his uncle not to get himself killed out there. The sweet moment gets interrupted by the Duke stepping in, nodding that Helmet truly broke his back on this last run. Suddenly, Elena glides in, looking super surprised to see the whole squad gathered in one spot. Locking eyes with Dale, she beams immediately, showering him with praise. She was absolutely thrilled to hear her little boy had finally unlocked his first magic circle. Alan jumps in with the hype too, telling the kid to just name his prize anything he wants. It's completely his. Dale aggressively rubs his chin. Begging to study literal necromancy is an instant red flag. So what exactly does a normal 8-year-old even ask for? Out of nowhere, he screams that he wants a baby sister. The parents literally turn to stone. Helmet is desperately fighting for his life, trying not to burst out laughing, while one of his soldiers aggressively whispers that their captain needs to hold it together. During such a wildly awkward moment, the Duke, with a completely paralyzed expression, forces out a stiff nod, muttering that they will look into that later. Later, staring at his bedroom ceiling, Dale realizes he really needs to dial up the innocent puppy act to perfectly match his pint-sized body. His bones feel totally drained, definitely a crash, from burning up all that magic. He passes out almost instantly, but the nightmares hit like a freight train. Count Brandenburg is standing right there in the dark. With a voice dripping with ice, the scumbag smirks, noting it's been a hot minute since their last little reunion, before violently yanking Dale up by his hair. He sneers, mocking how pathetic human nature is, how quickly people turn soft, now that Dale is playing house with his shiny new parents, sleeping in a cozy bed and eating like a king. He whispers venomously that revenge should be the last thing on his mind, because any second now, the Empire is going to hunt him down and erase his existence from this timeline forever. Dale violently gasps awake. A sharp, burning agony rips through his chest. His heart is hammering so aggressively against his ribs, it feels like it's about to explode. Mana reflux. He remembers reading about this literal nightmare. Clutching his fiercely aching chest, a dark, suffocating rage toward those imperialist scumbags boils over inside him. Those psychos literally never stop breathing down your neck. He stumbles out of his room, desperately hunting for praying the cool night air will settle his veins. But every single step just spikes the agony. Luckily, Sophia spots him stumbling through the halls and instantly clocks the crisis. She pinpoints the mana reflux in seconds, a brutal but totally normal side effect for a kid packing that much god-tier talent, and presses a glowing hand directly over his heart to stabilize him. But as she focuses her energy to drain the pain away, a terrifying thought creeps into her mind. If a kid this powerful ever fully snapped, one wrong move and he could cross a point of no return. But just like magic, the vicious mana kickback totally stops. Sophia immediately locks eyes with the kid. Magic isn't just formulas, it is a direct mirror of the soul. The exact same hex morphs completely depending on the mage weaving it. Dale's raw potential is way too lethal to just leave unchecked. In her mind, she is literally the absolute only person equipped to. Flashing a warm smile, she slides a heavy grimoire on necromancy right into his hands. She whispers that their paths crossing was nothing short of pure destiny. She softly wishes the young boy a happy birthday. Overcome with emotion, Dale throws his arms around her, squeezing with absolutely everything he has. Cut to just a few days later. Master and apprentice stand together out on a massive wind-swept northern plain. Spotting a tiny rabbit grazing up ahead, Sophia instructs Dale to picture himself out hunting with his dad. Instantly, the boy starts channeling his raw magic. The critter suddenly freezes, sensing eyes on it, but it is way too late. A glowing, intricate magic circle is already burning to life right in the palm of the young kid's. The blast rockets forward like a sniper round, dropping the creature with a sickening razor-sharp crack. Sophia locks onto the boy's hands. Zero hesitation. No shaking, not even a flinch after taking a life. Stepping in, the mentor breaks it down. The exact same spell can mutate into literally infinite variations, all depending on the caster's vibe and intent. She challenges him to guess why, but without even giving him a second to answer, she drops the ultimate truth. Magic reflects the heart. Those glowing mana particles literally drag whatever is locked deep inside a mage. Even basic spell names like Firewall, they just exist to trick the brain into visualizing the attack. Dale soaks in every single word, shifting uncomfortably on his feet. Sophia keeps pushing. She explains that the red tower demands absolute order through sheer brute force, while the blue tower chases total harmony. Their entire spellbooks scream those exact core philosophies. Every single magic system is strictly hardwired into the ideology those mages worship. She closely tracks her students' expressions while dropping this heavy lore. He is intensely dialed in, completely absorbing the information like a sponge. Still, deep down, she knows this is way too heavy for a kid to process all at once. Pivoting to the practical stuff, she introduces him to the ultimate baseline of necromancy, zombification. Sickly purple energy starts crawling all over the lifeless rabbit. The dark hex forces mana into the corpse, hijacking its nervous system so the caster can puppet it using invisible mana strings. Think of a twisted marionette hooked up right at the skull, spine, and joints. Against all odds, the kid is completely nailing it. Impressed, Sephia gives him the green light for Phase 2. Dale clenches his jaw in extreme focus, slamming his palm into the dirt to summon a freezing suit of ice armor. A massive shockwave rips outward, flash freezing the entire zone. The undead rabbit jerks up, fully coated in thick, jagged frost. The mentor immediately tells him to test its durability. Dale snaps his eyes open, trying to predict the sheer impact of her incoming strike. Sephia unleashes her blast. The tiny beast gets absolutely launched, but surprisingly, chunks of the frost armor actually survive the hit. Dale practically screams with hype. It actually worked. He straight up tanked a hit from his master. Looking totally satisfied, Sephia showers the kid with praise. But then she catches him hesitating like he is holding something back. She asks what is on his mind. Slowly, Dale presses his hand firmly right over his heart. Staring dead into his mentor's eyes, he begs her to teach him the absolute basics of water magic too. Sephia just gives him this super calm, knowing smile, and then hits him with a brutal, flat-out no. She breaks it down that ice trick he literally just pulled off. That was already a foundational water hex. Any elemental spell in that tier demands an insanely high multi-dimensional IQ. It is exponentially more complex than standard issue magic. Honestly, for a total rookie, just casting one element is completely exhausting. Trying to become a dual mage at his age is basically impossible. With that same gentle grin, she suggests he needs to lower his expectations. The boy's eyes fly wide open. After dropping that insane showcase, she still straight up refuses to believe in his potential. Dropping his gaze, he quietly mutters that they really need to figure out a way to level up together. Sophia immediately scrambles to justify her harsh call. Instead, she just cuts the training session completely short. But that very same night, Dale sneaks straight into the study, hauling out massive tomes, to grind the theory all by himself. His logic is simple. If he can force a crazy breakthrough, his master literally will not have a choice but to train him. The midnight hours blur by. Come morning, the kid rolls up looking absolutely destroyed, rocking massive dark bags under his eyes. Sophia gently warns him about burning himself out. He nods, then instantly ignites a glowing purple rune right in his palm. Within moments, he rips another rabbit straight back from the dead, perfectly locking it inside that frosty armor. His teacher instantly registers the flex he has flawlessly mastered, both insane techniques. But then the scene takes a totally unexpected dark turn. The thick ice plating starts violently cracking, then absolutely detonates. Sephia is left complete, yet somehow the undead rabbit is perfectly intact. The necromancy link has not snapped at all. Suddenly, the creature's stomach brutally bloats outward. A glowing, toxic purple orb flares up deep inside its gut. The tiny corpse violently convulses. Driven by some terrifying internal pressure, the body violently bursts into a million gory pieces. Lethal, jagged ice shards go flying absolutely everywhere. The shrapnel smashes viciously against her emergency magic barrier. Sephia just stares down her student, visibly shook to her core. Dale, looking totally unfazed, casually breaks it down. It is a ruthless combo corpse explosion, totally merged with an ice detonation. A flawless, terrifying fusion of pure water manipulation and pitch-black magic. Locking eyes with his stunned mentor, he hits her with the ultimate flex, asking if that little stunt finally qualifies him as a true dual mage. The entire battleground is littered with the brutal, frozen shrapnel left in the blast's wake. Sophia stands frozen, eyes blown wide. She had literally never witnessed a strike this by perfectly chaining the defensive frost armor right into a lethal corpse detonation. The kid engineered a massive, the raw damage output was infinitely more lethal than casting either spell solo. Plus the high-speed combo of frozen shrapnel and shattered bone acted like a literal hurricane of flying blades. This wasn't just some textbook move. It was a brutal shoot-to-kill technique, the kind of savage instinct you only forge by surviving the bloodiest front lines. The elf stares quietly, agonizing over what kind of dark, twisted world exists inside this kid's mind. Dale just glares right back, his eyes totally guarded, still desperately trying to decode his mentor's blank face. Right then, Uncle Helmet rolls up on horseback, throwing them a massive, upbeat wave. He brushes it off, saying they only ran into a tiny mob of dungeon freaks this time around. Practically a light warm-up for the legendary Black Cavalry. These guys are the absolute heavy hitters of House Saxon, a squad that completely steamrolls the battlefield, wielding lances dripping with raw aura. And their captain, the insanely skilled Sir Helmet, one of the ultra-rare legends crowned as the continent's 7 swords. Dale's face instantly lights up, and he calls out asking if his uncle totally ghosted on their training promise. Helmet just chuckles, telling the kid he can drop by the barracks literally whenever, but quickly points out the freezing air, urging him to hustle back indoors. Sophia nods, and the trio finally calls it a wrap for the day. Later that night, the elven tutor is nursing a cup of tea, deep in conversation with Elena and the Duke. She drops the absolute bombshell that young Master Dale has straight up mastered the first circle of necromancy. Oh, and water magic too. The Duke's jaw practically hits the floor. This was definitely not the deal. She was strictly hired to teach water elementals, nothing else. Sophia doesn't even flinch, completely standing her ground. As his mentor, she simply fed the kids insane hunger to learn. Water magic just wasn't cutting it for him. Elena sighs, admitting she totally gets her son's wild ambition, but practically begs the elf to keep the focus on water magic. Sophia respectfully agrees, hoping there won't be any bad blood between them moving forward. Right before dipping out, though, she pauses at the doorway, throwing a glance over her shoulder. She softly apologizes to Elena for forcing her to break her sacred vow with the Black Duke. Elena just smiles sadly, knowing her boy is built absolutely different. Being a dual mage at literally 8 years old, that is pure, unadulterated genius. The Duke's entire vibe shifts. He drops his gaze, his voice cracking into a heavy whisper. As a lord, he is dying to pass his dark necromancy down to his own flesh and blood, so his boy can be an absolute powerhouse, strong enough to crush the heavy burdens of an heir. As a mage, he craves a god-tier disciple, and as a father, he just wants to give his son everything he has. Alan looks at his wife, desperately begging for her forgiveness. Elena pulls him into a deep, emotional hug. She whispers that necromancy is still super taboo out there. The world sees it as a cursed, death-bringing magic, and that is exactly why she tried to shut it down. But then, she looks him in the eyes and tells him to train their boy, to push him until he's strong enough, to completely silence every single hater who dares to judge him. The two share this incredibly raw, tender moment, and the heavy tension in the room instantly melts away. Flashing a confident smirk, the Duke vows to bet his entire existence on turning his son into an absolute legend. And just like that, boom. Our main character's first official day of hardcore necromancy training officially kicks off. Towering over his son Duke, Alan crosses his arms, looking completely unamused. He drops the bomb that he heard Dale was out there reanimating random junk, without having a single clue about what he was actually doing. The kid stays completely mute, though, internally, he's grumbling that his literal teacher was the one who showed him that, so what the heck was he supposed to do? The duo is currently locked down in the Black Duke's ultra-secret magic workshop, hidden deep in the castle's basement. Alan glares down fiercely, warning him that as long as Dale is under his wing, he is never allowed to use that garbage-tier necromancy again. The grind starts instantly. Dale has to memorize the exact bone and muscle structure of literally every living creature. Buried under a mountain of dusty tomes, Dale completely locks in. After days of intense cramming, it hits him. This insane knowledge was stuff only elite surgeons would ever have access to in his past life. Once he perfectly burns every single detail into his brain, the Duke nods, declaring it's finally time for the real deal. Suddenly Dale's eyes snap wide open. Right there on the slab, a dead goblin. Alan catches the shock, totally paralyzing his kid's face, and casually mentions that a seriously overpowered sorcerer can easily take the mangled corpse of some random foot soldier and forge it into a terrifying death knight. Then he crosses his arms. So how are you gonna puppet this thing? Dale holds out his shaking hand, breaking into a massive sweat. Unlike a basic little rabbit, a two-legged monster is insanely complex. We're talking hundreds of crazy, intricate connection points for his mana threads. Straining, he forces the goblin's rigid hand to twitch, but it feels like wrestling the most stubborn, clunky marionette ever made. To make things infinitely worse, he had previously hyper-accelerated its rigor mortis for extra tankiness. Now the corpse is practically made of stone. It won't budge. He's low-key panicking. Out of nowhere, his dad rests a heavy, reassuring hand on his shoulder. He calmly explains that ramping up the rigor mortis for a massive defense buff was actually a huge brain play, but it absolutely ruins the body's mobility. With a dangerous glint in his eye, Alan tells the boy to watch and learn. Suddenly, pure, suffocating purple energy violently erupts from the Duke. The goblin snaps upright in an instant, puppeteered with terrifying godlike precision. Then, the absolute craziest thing happens. The monster's ribcage starts violently twisting. The very acted as a shield for its weak organs are suddenly repurposed, because honestly, the dead don't need any protection. Every single piece of flesh and bone becomes a deadly, weaponized extension. Alan grins, dropping the ultimate lesson: master the anatomy, and you can warp any corpse to do your absolute worst. Dale watches the whole thing unfold, absolutely mind-blown. The Duke drops the spell, calling it the literal bedrock of dark magic. Dale immediately shouts out to his dad, begging him to break down the Black Tower's core philosophy. This out-of-nowhere thirst for knowledge brings a proud smirk to Alan's face. He raises a hand, his voice echoing. Truth is always buried inside death. That's exactly why any real necromancer has to wrap their head around it. Master it totally, just to grasp how heavy life truly is. Those words hit Dale like a truck. Flashbacks of his past life as a knight come crashing in a life spent slaughtering countless enemies. His blade dripping red from relentless warfare, swinging over and over to snuff out yet another soul, every single slash drenched in pure agony. Dale completely zones out, drowning in the trauma. Spotting his blank stare, his dad asks if he's okay. The kid turns ghost white. The gritty mental image of a soldier sliding a blood-soaked blade back into its scabbard is practically burned into his brain. Still, he shakes it off and lies claiming he's totally fine. But as Dale's magical talent absolutely skyrocketed, wild rumors started ripping through the Empire. Whispers claimed Duke Saxon was secretly training his kid in the forbidden dark arts. The explosive collapse of the couple's engagement pact just added fuel to the fire, sending massive shockwaves through the elite nobility. Now the Empire's gaze is locked onto the boy 24/7. But Dale, he doesn't sweat it, grinding out hardcore training sessions with his uncle Helmet. He hones his swordplay like an absolute beast. The veteran knight pulls 0 punches, and the kid matches every brutal swing with pure, unfiltered rage. Helmet just grins like a proud mentor. With every vicious clash, his nephew's reaction time levels up crazily. Out of nowhere, Helmet shifts gears, stepping into a genuinely lethal strike. Dale barely avoids getting sliced, and without missing a single beat, he launches a razor-sharp counterattack that smacks the broadsword right out of his uncle's grip. The heavy blade spins through the air, slamming point first into the dirt between them. Helmet busts out laughing, completely blown away. He praises the kid, calling the counter absolutely insane. Dale isn't having it though, calling his uncle out for totally holding back. There's no way a top-tier knight drops their weapon that fast. Helmet claps back, explaining he was demonstrating real-world combat stances. In a life-or-death street fight, any normal guy would have been wiped out instantly by that counter. He admits the kid's raw talent is so god-tier. It's honestly a tragedy he's making a magic build instead. Still, he drops some facts saying most mages just hide behind meat shields and barrier spells. There's literally 0 reason for him to be sweating this hard in melee combat. Going overboard like this is just asking for a busted arm. Dale fires right back, saying he's got his own reasons for this crazy grind. It'd be a massive joke if the heir to the Duke had to desperately cower behind bodyguards and squishy magic shields. Hearing this, Helmet's face instantly lights up. He aggressively ruffles the kid's hair, praising the epic response, swearing he'd trade everything just to raise a son with that kind of grit. Their bonding moment gets interrupted when Elena steps onto the field. She strolls over, teasing them about looking like they're having way too much fun, then adds she wanted to check out her son's training grind. But then she drops a massive bombshell. She asks if Dale remembers that one specific birthday gift he begged for a while back. The boy scrunches his face, racking his brain. Suddenly, it clicks. Back on his birthday, he literally wished for a baby sister. Dale's eyes pop wide open in pure shock. Elena rests a gentle hand on her belly, telling him he's gonna have to step up and protect his new baby sister. With literal stars in his eyes, the boy squeezes his hands together, promising he's fully locked in for big brother duty. Fast forward 10 months, the whole squad is huddled around the newest addition. Dale softly pokes the newborn's squishy cheek, whispering that it feels so unreal having a sister. Elena smiles warmly, asking if he wants to hold her, promising it's super easy. The second he scoops the tiny infant up, the kid hyper-focuses on every single feature of her tiny face. Elena points out the baby was screaming her lungs out whenever their dad tried to hold her, but she instantly chilled out the second her big brother took over. Someone asks Dale how it feels. He whispers that she's insanely light, but somehow carries the Duke closes his eyes, cracking a deep, knowing smile. He tells his son that right there is the true weight of a human life. Leaning in close, he locks eyes with the boy, ordering Dale to never, ever forget that feeling. Elena quickly jumps in, dropping a reality check that Lady Sephia is definitely tapping her foot, waiting for his magic class. Cut to Sephia, who announces, Today is all about hands-on combat. Dale gets totally hyped. The elf instructor dares him to go all out, basically giving him the green light to spam his strongest moves. A glowing magic circle sparks to life right in the center of the boy's palm. The elf smirks, low-key curious to see if her student actually leveled up. Dale spawns a jagged ice spike, firing it straight at his teacher to kick things off. The opening shot is kind of sluggish though, and Sephia swats it away, effortlessly. Flashing a smug grin, she roasts him, demanding to know why a rookie is daring to hold back on his own master. Dale just glares back, dead serious. In a blink, Sephia unleashes a ruthless counterstrike, screaming at him to pop a shield. The kid's eyes bulge. He's totally caught lacking. The blast violently slams into his arm, but thanks to his crazy reflexes, he manages to snapcast an ice armor right before impact. Right as the impact struck, narrowly dodging a critical hit, his icy armor splintered into a million pieces while his master watched like a hawk. Nodding at his insane reflexes, she dared him to run it back. Dale didn't hesitate, immediately cooking up a complex molecular matrix, rooted in the standard ice wall spell. A massive, glittering fortress of frost erupted around him, leaving Sephia completely shook by its sheer scale. This kid hadn't just spawned some ice. He totally hijacked its molecular core, jacking up the density until it was literally as indestructible as titanium. His teacher closed the gap, running her hand across the sub-zero barricade. She questioned his timing, wondering why he'd pop a heavy defensive shield mid-fight. Was the boy just stalling to catch his breath after that last strike? But then a deafening crack ripped through the air. The ominous roar of a frozen bomb ticking down to zero. Locked inside his icy bunker, Dale was dead set in the zone. Without missing a beat, he triggered the blast. A blinding neon glow flared up deep within the frost. Sephia's eyes blew wide open. Before she could even flinch, razor-sharp icicles materialized out of nowhere and blitzed straight toward her, like an absolute barrage of missiles. The crystal shield exploded into a spectacular rain of glass, and Dale smirked, thinking he had his brainchild combo was absolutely lethal. He had stacked a heavy-duty ice wall with a built-in blast radius, basically turning the spell into a massive frag grenade. He was dead certain there was zero chance his master could just step out of the way this time, but then his blood ran freezing cold. Sephia stood point-blank in front of him, her body completely shredded by the shrapnel. Dale's brain short-circuited trying to process the gore. But wait, the real Sephia was chilling casually right behind the carnage without a single scratch on her. He had literally nuked a phantom. With a slick snap of her fingers, the decoy melted into thin air. She flashed a proud grin, hyping up his insane spellcraft. She straight up confessed. She never saw that level of big brain energy coming from a rookie tier 1 mage. If she hadn't been on her A-game, he would have actually wrecked her. Dale instantly dropped his gaze, stammering out that he never meant to go that far. Sephia waved it off, saying she already knew his vibe. Honestly, she was just hyped. She dropped down to his eye level, locking gazes with the boy, and told him that throwing a stunt like that meant he implicitly trusted her enough to unleash his ultimate firepower without holding back. As his mentor, she was over the moon. She even had to fangirl a little over the sheer genius it took to code such a busted magical sequence. Dale humbly deflected, claiming every ounce of his progress was all thanks to her elite coaching. Sephia beamed, watching her star pupil level up crazy fast, right in front of her. Flash forward a bit. Sephia was lounging in a study, catching up with Duke Allen. The guy immediately pointed out a nasty bruise on her jaw. The elf casually brushed it off, explaining she caught a stray hit while sparring with her wildcard student. Allen let out a knowing chuckle, joking that these kids were basically walking chaos engines. But the elf wasn't having it. She insisted that coaching her prodigy was never a drag. Honestly, it was the absolute highlight of her days. Getting straight to business, Allen dropped a massive situation on her plate. Intel just rolled in a savage mob of orcs, had breached the mountain pass, and were currently tearing through their lands. This wasn't some minor raid you could just brush off with a handful of knights. Sephia connected the dots instantly. A freezing spike of dread shot down her spine. Her voice shook as she asked if they were seriously plotting to throw Dale into the meat grinder. Allen shot that down fast. He knew the kid wasn't built for a full-scale war zone just yet, and there was no way in hell he'd force his own flesh and blood to tank the front lines right now. Still carrying the Saxon name meant carrying the weight of their land, and Dale was the heir to the throne. He had to step up eventually. Sephia fully recognized her boy was built different. Realizing this, Allen leaned in and asked for her professional game plan. The Duke pitched the idea of equipping his son with a high-tier artifact, a literal cheat code to help him perfectly master his overwhelming aura. But these relics weren't toys. They were packed with insane firepower and required an absolute beast of a user to wield them without backfiring. You could boot them up using sheer mana, or in a dark twist by draining your own life force. The higher the tier, the wilder the recoil, and messing up a single cast could literally end your life. The Saxon bloodline had been wrestling with this cursed energy for centuries, meaning their vault was absolutely stacked with these forbidden drops. Like it or not, the firstborn had to gear up for the coming slaughter. Later, the kid was visibly hyped to find out he was finally getting a piece of the real action. His old man laid out the mission briefing he was officially joining, the strike team to wipe out the incoming orc invasion. But before he could flex his skills out there, the father-son duo rolled up to a massive vault-like gate. It was time for Dale to finally conquer the signature shadow magic of the Saxon clan. The moment the heavy doors groaned open, the kid's jaw hit the floor. The chamber was ridiculously massive, crammed to the ceiling, with glowing mythical loot, every single piece being a direct drop from the Demon King's ancient stash, hoarded by his ancestors since the Dark Ages. This wasn't your average thrift shop gear. We're talking god-tier relics radiating a totally suffocating aura. The Duke gave a harsh warning: the rarer the item, the more lethal its curse. He ordered Dale to keep his hands to himself until he learned the ropes. But the second the adults spun around to keep lecturing, they realized they were talking to empty air. The reckless Prodigy had already gone rogue, digging through the legendary armory all by himself. Pacing through the dusty aisles of ancient relics, he knew he had to hunt down a weapon that actually— Suddenly, a wicked whisper bled out from a rusted shield. Craving a little payback, it hissed. The thing practically tasted the raw fury burning in his chest. Seconds later, the whole room woke up. Dozens of cursed artifacts started chattering at once, flooding his mind with dark magic whispers. Dale gripped his shirt, his heart hammering. These twisted treasures were literally feeding off his buried rage. Still, this was all just small fry trash. He craved something with real bite. Pushing deeper into the vault, his eyes locked onto a pitch-black cloak. He could swear it just spawned out of nowhere. Squinting at the fabric, it suddenly clicked. This was the Shadow Cloak, a top-tier demonic relic, once rocked by Duke Berta, the ruthless commander of the demon army. Yep, the exact same monster our guy threw down with in his past life. This badass gear let its wearer literally melt into the darkness, turning them into an absolute nightmare on the battlefield. Zero hesitation. Dale snatched it up to take it for a spin. Right on cue, Alan and Sifia burst into the hallway, screaming his name in panic. Too late. The dark fabric instantly swallowed the boy whole, erasing him from reality. Dale found himself yanked into the relic's twisted mindscape. A hollow, grinding voice started looping in his ears, begging for flesh, starving and desperate. This wasn't just some magic trick. Back in the day, equipping this nightmare let you command darkness like an army of living beasts. But there was a catch. You had to completely break the savage monster trapped inside the threads. Obviously, it wasn't going down without a fight. Cold sweat drenched Dale's face. Back in the physical world, the Duke and Sifia stared in absolute horror as a massive toxic purple cloud erupted from the floor. The elf's heart dropped. This was taking way too long. Alan gritted his teeth, warning that if they waited another second, the shadow fiend would eat the kid alive. Panicking, Sifia demanded a game plan. Alan drew his weapon, declaring they'd have to rip him out by force. But before they could even move, a blinding flash nuked the shadows. Bamdale popped back into existence without a single scratch. Flashing a cocky grin, he swore everything was chill. Sifia instantly rushed him, frantically checking for broken bones. The kid just shrugged it off, claiming it felt like static electricity. Not a big deal at all. Alan just stood there, his brain absolutely short-circuiting. How in the world did a literal child just tame a boss-tier relic? Meanwhile, Dale casually strutted up to his dad, eyes practically sparking, and dropped a crazy request. Mind if I— That insane level of chill completely broke both his master and the Duke. But somehow Alan gave him the green light. And just like that, Dale kicked off his ultimate loot run through the vault. Flash forward a few days. Dale rolls up to the training grounds rocking his new shadow cloak, ready to spar with his uncle. Helmet's jaw practically hits the dirt when he spots the cursed drip. He immediately checks if the young master is losing his mind. Everyone knows that cape is absolute hell to control. Dale just laughs, saying it barely even tickles. He guesses the thing gathered so much dust in storage that its stats got nerfed. But the second it tasted his mana, it glued itself right to his back. Honestly, it was acting like a needy puppy, begging for a friend. Yeah, right. A suffocating, pitch-black miasma violently pulsed beneath his boots with every step. Flashing a fearless smirk, Dale thanks his uncle for the trust, then drops a bomb. He doesn't want a drill. He wants a brutal, all-out duel. Hyped out of his mind, Helmet shifts into a killer stance, swearing he won't hold back and disappoint his nephew. Boom. The instant Helmet got serious, Dale felt the crushing gravity of a true monster. The aura of one of the continent's 7 elite swordsmen wasn't just heavy, it was suffocating. Just standing in his airspace felt like bench pressing a truck. Helmet flashed a confident grin, telling the kid not to wet himself just yet. He promised to stick to raw blade work, zero aura allowed. But that just pissed Dale off. In his eyes, a real warrior always goes 100%. Whatever. The mission right now was simple. Figure out how to abuse the shadow cloak in actual combat. If he pushed himself beyond his limits, the relic's hidden hacks would finally unlock. And the only way to do that was to get his hands dirty. Dale throws his arms forward, unleashing a vicious shotgun blast of razor-sharp shadow blades. Helmet doesn't even blink. He swings his blades so fast that the sheer wind pressure completely vaporizes Dale's attack. The boy just freezes, totally shell-shocked. Zero magic and it still hit like a freight train. Helmut bursts out laughing, hyping up his nephew's form before lunging straight for his neck. "My turn," he roars. Dale frantically scrambles backward, sweating bullets as he barely dodges a blindingly fast slash. Helmet's eyes track every single twitch. He's absolutely geeking out watching Dale use the cursed aura to lay down sneaky shadow traps on the fly. But slick tricks aren't nearly enough to block a veteran's wrath. Helmet launches into the air, bringing down a massive overhead smash. Dale throws up his hands, screaming as he blocks the hit, but the kinetic force sends him skidding yards across the dirt. Miraculously, his dark shield doesn't break. Helmet furrows his brow, genuinely blown away. That chop would have instantly shattered a standard steel broadsword. Only a godly piece of gear could tank that kind of damage. Grinning like a madman, Helmet shouts that they're just getting started. 10 more rounds right now. He promises to leave absolutely everything on the battlefield. Wrapping up the sparring session, the spectating knights start murmuring mind blown, realizing that literally not a single one of them had ever survived past 2 strikes against the captain. Even as a literal kid, Dale stands there looking like an absolute unbreakable tank. Fast forward a few days to the crack of dawn on deployment day. Dale pulls his mom aside for a heart-to-heart. Elena breaks down, confessing that no matter how hard she tries to wrap her head around this, she is absolutely terrified to send her little boy straight into a literal meat grinder. Dale immediately steps in to calm her nerves. He reminds her that Helmet and his dad are right there, backing him up, but she's still a nervous wreck. So he drops his guard and gets real. He needs to level up, so he can officially take over the Dukedom one day. When that time finally drops, he wants to be cracked enough to shield his dad, his mom, and his little sister Liz. He begs her to just let him grind and hit that power spike. With heavy tears pooling in her eyes, Elena finally caves. She just begs him to stay out of the crossfire. Dale hops into the saddle, swearing he'll return in one piece. As the sun creeps up over the forward base, Helmet rallies a massive, heavily armed squad of knights. Alan glances over at his son and tells him to call the march himself. He points out that the legendary Black Cavalry will be his to command one day, so he better get used to flexing that boss energy right now. Dale lets that heavy reality sink in. These absolute units aren't his dad's troops. They belong to him. Throwing his hand into the air, the kid screams that it's officially go time, pushing them to ride with savage pride and defend House Saxon. The knights hoist their massive weapons, roaring back that they are completely locked in and ready to follow the young master's call. Then the entire squad blasts off at breakneck speed, straight into the war zone. For this massive raid, 250 elite knights are mobilized, backed by a cracked sniper unit locking down the White Mountains, the Winter Watchers. Meanwhile, on the flip side, an absolute swarm of roughly 1,000 feral orcs is waiting. They shoved past the Upper Saxon River, running from freezing temps and brutal starvation, and are about to violently swarm the lower zone. The strategy: blitz them with a crazy ambush before they even know what hit them. But seamlessly moving 250 heavy troops across a massive river requires straight-up magic. Sophia steps up to the plate and orders the entire squad to back up. She starts chanting her spell, announcing she's about to drop a massive ice bridge. Dale is completely hyped to see his mentor flexing on the front line, but it suddenly hits him just how much this drains her. A hardcore pacifist who literally preaches against violence standing right here in the bloody trenches of a war. Dumping her entire mana pool into the cast, Sophia spawns a colossal ice bridge, thick enough to handle the weight of the entire army. The route is wide open. The elf tells them she's praying for the Duke to clutch the win. Alan gives her a deep nod of respect as always. Dale flashes his master a super warm smile and says his piece. Sophia tightly grips her chest. A chaotic, unsettling knot twists in her stomach as she watches her favorite student ride off into the danger. Heavy tears instantly blur her vision. She never dreamed she'd end up with a student who genuinely cared this much about her. Fast forward a bit, and the camera pans straight to the orcs' makeshift camp. The recon squad, the Winter Watchers, are already perfectly locked and loaded for the gank. Out of nowhere, blazing fire. Arrows absolutely shred the sky like insane fireworks nuking the enemy base. The orcs are caught totally slipping, completely blindsided. Dozens get violently dropped before they can even blink, and the dirt is instantly paved with bodies. Helmet aggressively barks at the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd cavalry battalions to aggressively push up. The heavy knights stampede forward in a deadly V formation. Watching the massive rush, Helmet asks Dale for his take on the brutal play. The kid, however, is completely zoned out in his own head, calculating the massive momentum of the horses, the heavy armor specs, and that insane crouching lance strat. It's a brutal move designed to completely shatter enemy front lines, while playing it totally safe from 3 to 4 meters out, making it totally broken when stacked with a knight's glowing aura. Dale points out that this is an absolute one-sided massacre. Helmet nods, stating that is the raw OP power of the Duke's cavalry, but strictly warns him not to get cocky just yet. This fight is barely kicking off. The raging orcs frantically pull it together and fiercely shove back into the fray, flexing massive meat shields and razor-sharp spears. The sneak attack did massive damage, but it definitely didn't clear the lobby. It's time to kite back, reset the formation, and chain combo them into the dirt. A bright flare shoots straight up into the clouds, the absolute fallback ping. The entire squad pivots instantly, whipping their mounts violently away from the meat grinder. The orcs are totally baffled for a hot second, but that stun rapidly morphs into pure toxic rage. While one of the straggler knights tries to peel away the monsters, instantly lock onto him with their spears. A brutal throw absolutely snipes the horse. The beast faceplants hard, violently launching the rider into the dirt. Dale watches the whole terrifying disaster. He gulps, sweating bullets, even though the guy's HP isn't in the red just yet. But the Duke, he has already completely written the man off as dead. A savage orc sprints in to blindly secure the kill. Dale whips his head back, absolutely panicked, asking why his dad and uncle are just standing there. AFK. Clocking their silent standoff, the kid's brain goes into overdrive. Galloping down there would chew up way too much time. A ranged snipe is the only play, but orc skin is built like pure armor compared to regular mobs. He's got to tweak his ice bolt equation on the fly. Dale remixes his spell, fusing a sniper's trajectory with the sleek mechanics of a literal assault rifle. Cranking up the raw damage and recoil control, he molds his fingers into a literal gun, locking his crosshairs dead on the beast about to execute the downed knight. The monster hoists its blade for the kill screen. Bang! Dale shoots. The icy slug blasts the creature right between the eyes. Helmet is absolutely shook. Nailing a headshot from that far out is insane, but Dale isn't sticking around to flex. He's already on the move. The Duke waves Helmet off, letting his son cook. Flexing a custom spell at just 8 years old proves he packs serious heat. It totally proves Dale's mental core is fully unlocked for combat. Face locked in absolute focus, the kid storms the front line. The brute squad finishes rallying, and one massive unit comes bulldozing straight ahead. Dale is juggling 2 massive headaches. Number 1. The grounded soldier is totally panicking and frozen in place. Number 2. His current spell code drags way too long for close quarters boxing. He desperately needs a shortcut. Sprinting ahead, he aggressively rewrites the magic. He needs something snappy, point blank, deeply layered but totally viable for a messy brawl. The concept solidifies into a lethal ice bullet. The crashed soldier spots Dale closing in, and the brute does too. Timing it to absolute perfection, Dale pulls the trigger. The frozen shell carves a flawless curve through the air, drilling the target's skull. The beast flops like a rag doll. The knight just gapes at the kid, mind blown, begging to know why the young master is putting his neck on the line for him. Dale hops off his ride, strolling up with zero sweat. He casually tells him to chill out. The Saxon family never leaves a loyal blade behind. The warrior desperately tries to scrape himself off the dirt, but 2 fresh monsters swarm in absolute murder in their eyes. Dale is absolutely not letting that slide. He thrusts out his palm, and the split second those freaks step into his zone, he unleashes his phantom blades. A sick, violet shockwave rips across the dirt, instantly shattering the monster's gear like cheap glass. Flashing a wicked smirk, Dale orders his shadowy domain to eat them alive. The brute's eyes roll back, completely blank. A hollow globe of toxic purple energy swallows its massive frame, and then it just crumbles, crashing down dead next to its buddy. In literally seconds, the fleshy remains rot away into bare bones, thanks to the kid's brutal necromancy. Dale chuckles loudly, wondering why the rest of the mob hasn't chickened out yet. Just to seal the deal, he blasts one final frost round. Mission accomplished. The young boss pivots back to the guardsman, who is still having a full-blown meltdown, and tells him the coast is clear. The guy stammers that his legs are pure jelly. Dale scans the vibe and instantly makes a move, flexing a ridiculous amount of muscle for an 8-year-old. He hauls the grown man up and drags him out of the kill zone. He tosses a casual comment that Uncle Helmet can mop up the rest. Helmet grins at the flex, and barks the command for every single battalion to full send a massive synchronized strike. Hyped out of their minds, the troops rush the field screaming war cries, totally ready to bleed for young Master Dale. Fast forward a bit, chilling back at the Saxon war camp, the orc wipeout is officially in the books. The Duke summons his boy. He's got a serious question about that wild stunt out there. He needs the actual truth behind why the kid solo rushed the enemy trenches. Looking straight up, ticked off, the warlord glares down at Dale and demands to know what possessed him to pull such a crazy suicidal move. Dale is totally lost, practically sweating bullets. Zero clue why he's getting roasted right now. He starts breaking down exactly why he dove into the meat grinder completely unbacked. The Saxon Knights are his future squad. They'll be riding under his banner one day. He just did what his gut told him was morally right. Instantly, the Duke claps back, calling that excuse pure weak sauce. Dale gets defensive, firing back, that his old man is literally famous for cherishing his men. So, why was he just spectating while a loyal guard almost got packed up? Alan lays down the harsh truth. Northern border knights don't get fairy tale rescues on the bleeding edge. Every single warrior has to use their own brain and brawn to stay breathing. Anyone who plays the victim, praying for a superhero landing every time things get rough, is already dead meat. These soldiers gotta keep their survival instincts razor sharp, and the boss only tags in when the threat level is way out of their league. Dale freezes, realizing his dad's logic is flawlessly brutal. A heavy knot forms in his chest. It suddenly hits him that he completely lost touch with a grim reality he used to swear by in his past life. But even after the heavy reality check, his pops rests a firm hand on his shoulder. He gives the kid his props, admitting that Dale moved on his own strong morals, and swears he should never let that spark die out. Throwing the tent flaps wide open to catch the blinding sun, the Duke calls for them to head back to the fortress. Of course, the epic lore of the young lord rushing the field to save a foot soldier was prime bait for the Empire's rumor mill. Those gossip hounds totally ate it up. Some random dude even screamed to the heavens that the kid soloed over 1,000 literal monsters without taking a single scratch. The hype went completely viral overnight. Dale honestly found the massive clout super cringy, but the whole incident, he straight up sparked a massive shift in the duchy's vibe. Fast forward to the training grounds. The knights were practically worshipping the ground he walked on. Low-key flustered, our boy frantically waved them off, begging them to chill. But Helmet wasn't having it. He hyped Dale up, telling him to own that legendary status. Throwing a fist in the air, the commander rallied the squad, roaring that this massive respect fueled their power. Instantly, the soldiers' energy spiked off the charts. Right then, a maid stepped up, dropping the news that the VIPs from House Orlhart were pulling up. Dale threw her a quick thanks, and the duo moved out. He could feel it in his gut, some major players were stepping onto the board. House Orlhart wasn't just any name. They were absolute beasts on the battlefield. A former top-tier noble clan from the Kingdom of Teutonia, led by the fierce Barthil, their glory completely shattered during the War of Unification. When the divine sword fell, the entire bloodline crashed and burned. Helmet stared at the ground, a shadow crossing his face, as he remembered the absolute legend who sparked his knightly journey, a painfully bitter pill to swallow. Stepping into the massive main hall, Dale spotted his parent. The Duke flashed a look, asking if his son had been grinding out on the field. Dale nodded hard. Right on cue, a butler cleared his throat to announce the heavy hitters, prompting Alan to command absolute top-tier respect from everyone in the room. A woman draped in heavy mourning clothes stepped through the massive doors, towing a tiny blonde girl behind her. The lady softly dropped her name, Vanessa Orhart, bowing deeply to the Duke of Saxon. But the kid, she was frozen like a statue. Shooting back a sharp, panicked glare, Vanessa quickly introduced her daughter, Charlotte Orlhart. The little girl looked absolutely done with the whole situation. Dale's eyes widened as he watched Charlotte straight up check her own mom in front of everyone. Snapping, she demanded to know why they were bending the knee to absolute strangers. The Duke smoothly stepped in to kill the awkward silence. Pointing out their brutally long trek, he gently nudged Dale to escort Lady Charlotte on a VIP tour of the fortress. Flashing a warm, easy smile, our boy held out his hand to guide her. Charlotte just hit him with an ice-cold death glare and viciously slapped his hand away. Dale blinked, totally blindsided by the sharp sting radiating through his palm. The Duke and Elena physically flinched at the disrespect. Catching herself, Charlotte knew she crossed the line, but a sorry wasn't happening. Instead, she hit them with a deadpan sneer, mocking how utterly classless imperial nobles were. Her mother frantically ordered her to apologize, but Charlotte just spun on her heel and stomped off. Panicking, Vanessa screamed for her to stop. Spinning back to the royal couple, she frantically begged them to let the insane disrespect slide, swearing up and down that her daughter was never this toxic. She was just heavily traumatized by the absolute nightmare they just escaped. Elena's face softened, asking for the tea. Trembling Vanessa dropped a bombshell just days ago. Count Brandenburg got installed as the supreme inspector of their turf. This dude was infamous across the entire empire, packing god-tier combat skills and a super terrifying title, the Pig King. Completely obsessed with breeding an ultra-powerful heir, this psycho ruthlessly hunted down insanely talented sword wielders, totally ignoring age or gender, even if his target was literally a child. Choking back tears, Vanessa revealed how she barely pulled off a high-stakes escape with her daughter, slipping right through his greasy fingers at the very last second. But you don't just walk off that kind of heavy psychological damage. Voice cracking, she swore she'd burn the world down to keep Charlotte safe. But as a ruined noble, she was totally powerless. That's exactly why she was on her knees pleading with them to take her kid in, even as a lowly maid. Anything to keep her out of that monster's hunting ground. Cut to the edge of the estate. Dale and Charlotte were totally alone, calling out to the runaway girl. Our boy nervously scratched the back of his neck, deadpan asking if she actually had a destination in mind. Defeated, Charlotte muttered a hard no. A heavy silence passed before she awkwardly asked if his hand was busted. Brushing it off, Dale told her to chill, no damage done. Tightening her grip on her hilt, the blonde sighed, saying that was a massive relief. And then boom, out of nowhere she unsheathed cold steel, pointing the tip straight at his chest. Voice steady as a rock, she aggressively demanded a duel. Barking at him like he was some basic lackey, she screamed at him to draw his weapon right now. Dale instantly broke out in a nasty cold sweat. This chick was absolutely unhinged, totally playing by her own chaotic rules. Even with her relentlessly begging for a fight, Dale held his ground flat out, stating he needed a solid reason to throw down. Locking eyes with him, she confessed she'd caught a ton of wild rumors of a completely cracked mage who slaughtered over 1,000 orcs and single-handedly bailed out a knight. It was exactly that kind of insane hype Dale knew would put a massive target on his back. For Charlotte Clapping, a legend like him was the ultimate flex to prove her hardcore strength. But deeper than that, it was her only way to prove to her family that she was fierce enough to crush that creep, the swordmaster Count Brandenburg. Just hearing that cursed name shot absolute ice through Dale's veins. He recognized that disgusting mug perfectly. The memory was burned into his brain because that guy was just another one of the Empire's scumbags who viciously stabbed him in the back in his past life. In that split second, everything clicked. Their endgames were exactly the same. They weren't enemies, they were totally meant to be allies. But before anything else, he had to give her a brutal reality check. Spinning around, he marched over to a wooden barrel, yanked out a practice sword, and scoffed. She was completely clueless. Leveling the tip of the blade right at the blonde's chest, he dared her to unleash hell. Charlotte's eyes flared with pure fury. "You don't have to tell me twice," she snapped, launching herself forward like an absolute missile. Steel slammed against steel, ringing out a deafening shockwave. The girl wasn't joking around. She actually shattered Dale's defenses a handful of times, packing some serious heat with her aura. While mages weave mana through ancient circles, knights push past human limits by hypercharging their own bodies with raw aura. Every single strike she delivered swung with bone-crushing pressure. Yet Dale brushed it off like it was nothing, blocking her attacks without even breaking a sweat. Whenever she whiffed, she instantly bounced back with a vicious counter. Her legendary bloodline was the real deal. Her combat IQ was way beyond what he initially thought. The sparring match raged on the relentless screech of grinding metal, echoing across the entire courtyard. Then it clicked for Dale. Charlotte was swinging with massive emotional baggage. Her dad had passed away before she even took her first breath, but her mom fed her endless legends about him. He was the wielder of the divine sword, an absolute beast who refused to ever back down, even when their homeland crumbled to dust and their family hit rock bottom. Charlotte convinced herself she had to step into those massive shoes and defend her loved ones with a blade, stepping up for the ghost of a father she never even met. It was driving her insane. Why couldn't she crush this kid when she was giving it 100%? She lunged again, locking her weapon directly onto Dale's gut. With a lightning-fast sidestep, he vanished from her sight, instantly parrying and shoving her back into the dirt. Charlotte was totally spiraling. She just couldn't swallow this pill. How on earth was the heir to the divine sword losing this badly? Dale coldly told her the truth was super simple. She wasn't the divine sword yet. Sure, flexing her dad's legacy was totally normal, but in her current state, she'd never stand a chance at saving her family from that psycho, because that guy was on a whole different level. Completely shattered tears streamed down Charlotte's face. Voice shaking, she begged to know what she was supposed to do now. Dale turned his back and dropped a massive vow. He swore on his own bloodline that he'd become the ultimate shield for House Oralheart. Charlotte's eyes blew up with absolute shock. He didn't stop declaring that until she leveled up enough to finally drop him. He and his entire family would take the hits for her. Speechless, she choked out a "why?" Dale kept it insanely blunt, telling her she was a high-tier investment. Then he flipped the script, asking the blonde if she was ready to swear that. Down the road, she'd join his ranks and become the ultimate weapon for House Saxon. Flashing a watery grin, Charlotte admitted there was zero chance she was turning down a lifeline like that. Dropping to one knee, she pledged her total loyalty with true knightly honor. It looked like a basic playground pinky promise, but that exact second locked in a pact that would literally shake the future. Two insane prodigies had just formed an unbreakable duo. Fast forward to Duke Saxon's private study, where Dale was having a deep chat with his old man. Alan noted that, just like his son asked. Lady Oralhart was officially absorbed into the duchy as a retainer. He admitted it was a wild move, but once he heard Charlotte actually said yes, he knew his boy was pulling the strings. Dale owned up to it, dropping the bomb that the two of them had locked in a massive pact, and that he'd literally bet the family's honor on shielding House Oralhart. Squinting with hard suspicion, the Duke asked if this was just some weak charity case. Dale shot that down instantly. He told his dad he spotted a straight-up generational talent in her, paired with the raw DNA of the divine sword, finally exposing his absolute master plan. One day, he wanted a brand new divine sword to rise up as their family's ultimate trump card. The Duke shut his eyes, deeply impressed. Dale smirked, knowing he totally nailed his dad's approval. Cut to the ancient capital of Teutonia Marlborough, where a crystal wine glass exploded violently against the marble floor. Count Brandenburg stood there completely unhinged, screaming at his men, demanding to know how they dared to botch the mission, and how they got played so hard. A terrified soldier stammered that their shadow squad was completely wiped out before they even stepped foot in Saxon territory. All signs pointed straight to Charlotte Oralhart. The Count squeezed his eyes shut, his blood pressure absolutely spiking. He growled that his entire crew was a bunch of useless trash, no exceptions. Stalking over to a massive blade mounted on his wall, he traced his hand down the cold steel. Out of nowhere, a bloody memory from a past war zone flashed in his mind. Sliding his fingertips across the razor-sharp edge, he whispered to the sword Durandal, asking what it thought about this whole mess. To this psycho, it wasn't just a hunk of metal, it was practically his bride. He begged it to just hold on a little longer, swearing he was going to breed the absolute perfect bloodline, just so it could be wielded again. Ripping his death glare back to the soldier, he barked out a fresh command: hit up the underground thieves guild, and dispatch them straight to the duchy right this second. Flashing a completely deranged smirk, he made it crystal clear his wallet was wide open. He wanted Charlotte dragged back, no matter the bloody cost. 7 days passed since the kids locked in their crazy vow. Through that whole week, Charlotte had been grinding through straight-up hellish training. Stepping into her role as a lady-in-waiting, crossing blades with Dale, just became her daily grind. And of course, Uncle Helmet never took his eyes off them. Dale drops into his stance, a cocky smirk flashing across his face. Charlotte mirrors him, tightening her grip, though her nerves are practically buzzing. Helmet shuts his eyes, letting the tension build before finally giving the nod. Clang! Their blades clash in a split second. Dale casually controls the rhythm effortlessly, slipping past her wild swings. But Charlotte refuses to back down, fueled by pure stubbornness. It hits him right away she's actually getting good. She's actively parrying his heavy blows now. Observing from the sidelines, Helmet's chest swells with serious pride. This isn't just kids playing with swords anymore. They are moving like full-blown, battle-hardened knights. Yet a chill runs down Helmet's spine. The raw, lethal energy radiating from them, coupled with their blinding speed, is genuinely terrifying. Mid-clash, Dale whips his heavy cape up to blind her strike. Charlotte catches the tiny window of vulnerability and instantly dashes in. She locks onto her target for a fatal lunge. But before the blade connects, Helmet physically steps into the crossfire, shutting it down. He immediately hypes up her massive improvement. Charlotte isn't having any of it. She snaps at him to drop the fake compliments, aggressively, demanding to know exactly where she's messing up. Helmet locks eyes with her, challenging her to name the absolute core rule of wielding a rapier. Without missing a beat, she says it's all about the thrust. Wrong, he fires back. It's 100% about your feet spacing, shifting, and owning the floor. To prove it, Dale steps up to show her how it's actually done. He instantly closes the gap, weaving through her phantom strikes like water. Right there, that was the exact second Charlotte needed to retreat. She should have ripped open some breathing room and hunted for a fresh angle. But her balance is entirely off, totally uncoordinated, simply because she's never had a legit mentor. They literally have to tear down her basics and rebuild them from zero. The brutal honesty clearly stings her. Catching her gloomy vibe, Dale casually messes up her hair. "Hey, I'm just playing with you," he teases, noting she's too adorable to stay mad. The heavy tension instantly melts away. Now, shifting gears, forging a mana circle is a ridiculously slow, agonizing grind. You physically have to sense the magical currents swirling around your heart, waiting until a solid core takes root. Honestly, it can take literal decades. Sophia checks in, asking if he's managed to lock down his second circle yet. Dale gives a confident nod. See, mana spin rates are literally clocked in RPM. Your average tier 1 mage taps out around 300 spins per minute. Dale, he's blowing those numbers completely out of the water. That basically means he's fully qualified to break through to tier 3 right now. Yet he stubbornly chooses to polish his current toolkit instead. He shifts his focus to his signature ice bullet, forcefully packing the molecules tighter to max out both its heavy mass and raw piercing power. Locking onto a thick tree trunk, he funnels all his mental energy into the spell and pulls the trigger. The frosty slug violently tears straight through the wood like it's paper. Dale steps up to inspect the brutal damage. Wait, was crafting armor-piercing ammo always this incredibly easy? He mutters to himself. Watching him, Sophia beams with total pride. Classic Dale. The kid is a total prodigy. He immediately bounces the credit back to his mentor, letting her know he owes her big time for everything. Between saving them in the dead of night to handling the whole Charlotte drama, every single crisis just cements the elf's rock-solid faith in him. In Sophia's eyes, his insane potential is honestly borderline terrifying. But at the end of the day, her student is her greatest flex. Overwhelmed, she suddenly yanks him into a massive, suffocating hug. The sudden burst of affection leaves the guy totally red-faced and buffering. Later, bathed in the golden hour light of the main courtyard, Dale's mind is still looping that awkward hug. Does she seriously still treat me like a toddler? He thinks. He aggressively shakes the thought away. It's grind time. Dialing his focus back in, he summons a massive frozen barricade out of thin air. Thrusting both hands forward, he pumps pure mana into the construct. He's cooking up a nasty new variant, an ice bullet shaped exactly like a shotgun shell. Boom, operating like a heavy scattergun. A lethal swarm of micro shards blasts out all at once, shredding the icy wall with terrifying accuracy. A few strays wildly bounce back toward him, but his reflexes kick in, snapping a protective. Staring at the shattered ice, the gears in his head start turning. What if I added an explosive shrapnel effect upon impact? Working late, a voice suddenly echoes out. Charlotte casually strolls up, genuinely shocked to catch him sweating it out in the courtyard. She drops that she's been drilling those brutal footwork techniques Helmet forced on her. Dale shoots her a grin, noting she actually sounds like she's having fun grinding. A soft, genuine smile breaks across her face as she nods. Then, shuffling her feet awkwardly, she drops her guard. Look, I'm sorry. I was acting like a totally selfish brat to you. Slipping up and using his real name, she instantly panics, stiffly correcting it to young master. Dale just sighs, closing his eyes, and bluntly agrees with her confession. Yeah, you were definitely a nightmare, and then some, he teases. A playful smirk hits his lips. But hey, you're lucky. I'll make a super rare exception and let it slide. Charlotte's eyes go wide, shocked that he's actually letting her off the hook. He nods, telling her to seriously drop the stuffy formal act. The two just chill against a nearby oak, chatting comfortably as time slips by. Charlotte admits she's obsessed with the crisp, freezing air out here. As the temperature sharply tanks, the whole atmosphere just feels incredibly pure. Dale completely agrees, quietly, studying the soft smile lighting up her face. It hits him right then he finally found someone who perfectly matches his weird, chilly vibe. And honestly, that thought gives him serious butterflies. But totally unknown to them, eyes are watching from a high tower window. Elena snickers softly, elbowing her husband. Look at him. Our boy is officially in his smooth He chuckles, asking if she genuinely thinks they'd make a killer couple. Elena just smirks, whispering, guess we'll just have to wait and see. Elena insists that a mother's ultimate job is helping her boy stop hiding and actually be completely real about his own feelings. Sometime later on the edge of the duchy, Elena is chatting up a local baker, sweetly nagging the older guy to take his health seriously. The poorest corners of the city are absolutely packed with homeless folks, just trying to survive, which is exactly where the Duchess dives into her hardcore charity work. Passing out hot meals and basic survival gear, that was the exact year Charlotte and Dale started tagging along on her missions. While navigating the grimy alleys, this totally ragged little kid runs straight up to Charlotte, crying his eyes out and begging for a lifeline. He swears his mom is in massive danger. But Dale's internal alarm bells instantly go off. Why on earth would this kid single out Charlotte instead of literally any adult? To make matters worse, the crew is slowly drifting away from their security guards. Sweeping his gaze across the rooftops, Dale locks onto a shady hooded figure. He immediately connects the dots. This stalker is part of a thug ring, definitely sent by Saxon, and Charlotte is the absolute main target. The little boy tells them to hold tight, promising to run right back with his mom. But what actually steps out of the shadows? a whole squad of goons, flashing bare knives. Their boss steps up with a smirk, openly mocking how wild it is to catch such a shiny, high-class noble wandering right into a sketchy death trap. He makes it crystal clear that they only want the maid standing beside him, firmly warning the young master to step aside and mind his own business. Flexing his blade, the thug drops a dark warning. If Dale tries to play hero and acts on impulse, he is going to end up seriously hurt. Flashing a confident smirk, Dale stated he'd already promised to keep his best friend completely safe, especially from trash like them. The bandit captain just cackled. He mocked the young noble's cute little hero complex, sneering that the kid really needed a massive reality check. As the rest of the thugs aggressively closed in, the boss growled that it was time for a brutal lesson in how the real world actually worked. Charlotte yelled out a frantic warning, her heart pounding. But Dale didn't even flinch. He softly told her to relax, realizing this was the absolute perfect chance to take his brand new power for a spin, the Shadow Mantle. While the scavengers rushed forward, the boy stood dead still. A suffocating violet aura suddenly exploded from his skin, whipping up a bizarre, chilling gale that completely creeped out the attackers. Catching on to the deadly vibe way before his crew, the leader frantically screamed for everyone to fall back. But the sheer force of the shockwave blasted the mercenaries backward. One unlucky guy, however, was instantly swallowed whole by the pitch-black energy. The skill forcefully injected a demonic shadow straight into the thug's veins, like a lethal parasite, violently mutating him into a brainless zombie soldier that operated totally on instinct. The boss was left entirely speechless. The hijacked lackey twisted into an absolute nightmare, as jagged claws ripped right through his flesh. Dripping drool, the beast just kept chanting on an endless loop that he was starving. So freaking hungry. Panicking, the boss shrieked at the remaining grunts to go all out and shred that monster to pieces. At this point, a green-haired rogue completely screaming that he didn't give a damn who this kid actually was anymore. One single slip-up meant they were all going to die. The whole squad relentlessly swarmed Dale. Blurring into a full sprint, the emerald-haired assassin circled the boy mercilessly, unleashing a massive barrage of throwing knives. Dale didn't even break a sweat, effortlessly deflecting every single. Going totally all in, the rogue ditched the ranged attacks and lunged straight in for a brutal killing strike. But Dale was 10 steps ahead. He instantly triggered his double-barrel 12-gauge ability, firing off a catastrophic blast. The devastating point-blank shot caught the assassin dead in the chest, violently launching him across the battlefield. Charlotte watched the absolute carnage, completely mind-blown. All the while, Dale's grotesque shadow puppet was brutally tearing through the rest of the panic-stricken crew. Leading out, the stubborn captain roared that he wasn't done yet and bulldozed straight toward the young lord. Huge mistake. He slammed right into a hidden magic trap that Dale had quietly rigged from the very start. Nearby, the mutated zombie kept violently sobbing about his bottomless hunger as he viciously ripped apart the final straggler. With the bloodbath finally over, Dale casually strolled over to Charlotte, softly asking if she was totally unhurt. Meanwhile, the absolute last surviving grunt stared at the terrifying horror movie playing out in front of him, shrieking out a pure, unfiltered terror. Before the guy could even bolt, Dale sniped him right in the kneecap with a freezing ice round. Snapping his fingers, the boy then instantly dissolved his monstrous creation. Writhing in absolute agony, the trapped scavenger started hysterically begging for mercy, promising to spill every single secret he had. He swore up and down he'd sing like a canary about everything he knew. But before he could even squeeze out another word, a fatal shot blasted right through his skull. Ice-cold Dale muttered that he honestly couldn't care less about hearing his excuses. The lifeless body collapsed into the dirt. Charlotte just stared at the massacre, totally traumatized by the sheer violence of everything that just went down. Breaking the heavy silence, Dale gently explained that this brutal darkness was the actual reality of the Saxon family. A terrifying but the absolute only power capable of keeping her safe. Staring deeply into her eyes, he nervously asked if she was terrified of him now. Charlotte took a deep breath, gently shutting her eyes to process the madness, before firmly assuring him that she was completely okay. At the end of the day, her best friend had literally put his life on the line just to save her. She confessed that after their vow yesterday, she had secretly made her own hardcore pledge, that her entire bloodline would serve as his ultimate shield. And one day, she fully planned to pay back his savage loyalty by becoming the deadliest blade, forged specifically for his hands. Flashing a blindingly bright smile, she thanked the young lord for proving what was possible, swearing she'd absolutely grind to get stronger. That heavy confession totally caught him off guard. Dale just spaced out, deeply analyzing why he felt such an obsessively strong urge to shield this girl from the world. Sure, a massive chunk of it was just lingering guilt over the whole Lord Babel tragedy. But as he slowly reached out to grab her hand, it instantly clicked. If Charlotte seriously wanted to be his personal weapon, the weight of that promise was astronomical. Their fingers intertwined, locking in an insanely powerful bond that could literally never be shattered. Meanwhile, over in Count Brandenburg's territory, the imposing man was completely frozen at his desk, dripping with nervous sweat. His hands violently shook as he gripped a heavily sealed letter. The chilling message noted that traveling might be a massive hassle right now, but it formally invited him to step foot inside the Duke of Saxon's fortress anyway, politely demanding he take this highly sincere invitation seriously, and made it crystal clear that refusal wasn't an option. This was who held him directly accountable for the entire disaster. It was a brutal trap that left absolutely zero escape routes, not even for a legendary powerhouse known as the Sword Saint. Fast forward a few days, and a terrified Brandenburg was awkwardly standing face to face with the terrifying ruler inside Saxon Castle. Flashing a frighteningly polite smile, Alan casually mentioned the trip must have been utterly exhausting. Smirking that he never expected him to show up this quickly, he sarcastically apologized if his hospitality felt a little underwhelming. Sweating bullets. Brandenburg pressed a hand to his chest, swearing up and down that absolutely nothing topped a summons from the Duke. His eyes darted toward the two kids, some seriously twisted schemes brewing in his head. He casually dropped that the Empire was sweating the recent chaos breaking out across the territory, snatching kids in broad daylight. Yeah, that definitely turns heads. He figured that was exactly why he got dragged out here. But he played dumb, acting totally clueless as to how the Emperor's loyal sword could ever be tied to such a filthy crime. Before another lie could leave his mouth, Alan unleashed a suffocating wave of purple aura. The sheer force whipped up a gale, knocking Brandenburg's elite squad completely off balance. In a matter of seconds, those heavily armored soldiers literally started crumbling to dust. Absolute panic washed over Brandenburg. His jaw dropped as his legendary Order of Holy Knights got wiped off the map without even swinging a single sword. Trembling, he locked eyes with the Duke, stammering out a question about what on earth that spell was. The answer: top-tier dark magic. The Nihil Storm. Voice cold as ice, Alan dropped a lethal warning. If Brandenburg even breathed in those kids' direction again, he ordered the Sword Saint to carve that promise deep into his skull and never ever forget it. Then, flipping the switch like a total psycho, Alan smiled. He told the guy he must. Still shaking in his boots, Brandenburg choked out a quick thank you to his grace for playing nice. But he immediately backpedaled, making up some bogus excuse about why he had to bounce right that second. As he spun around to bolt, Alan smoothly wished him a safe trip back home. Count Brandenburg was the Emperor's ultimate lapdog, and he had just witnessed something game-changing, a literal ticking time bomb that could rip the Empire's foundation to shreds. Right now it was just a tiny spark. But that spark was bound to trigger a massive inferno, and when the smoke cleared, chopping off the Sword Saint's head would be a job reserved exclusively for our main character. It didn't take long for the gossip to spread like wildfire. Word on the street: the almighty Sword Saint had completely folded and bowed down to the Black Duke. Cut to Alan yanking back a blood-stained tarp, revealing a sight that left Sophia absolutely paralyzed. Dumped right in front of her were the lifeless bodies of the guild members, the exact same scumbags who dared to jump Dale earlier that day. The poor teacher's brain short-circuited, trying to grasp that her own pint-sized student had caused this absolute carnage. The corpses were shredded organs, missing bones pulverized, and complete. For the very first time, a wave of doubt hit Sophia. She seriously started questioning if her teaching methods were totally messed up, but Alan wasn't having it. He made it crystal clear that she was absolutely crucial for keeping Dale's monstrous talent from going off the rails. Because of that, he was handing her the official title of Chief Advisor. The elf just dropped her gaze, looking seriously stressed out. Deep down, she knew exactly what this heavy offer meant. This wasn't just a tutoring gig anymore. She was being drafted into the Saxon family. Even with a powerhouse dad like Alan around, keeping Dale in check wasn't a solo mission. But having a heavy-hitting elf in his corner, that changed the whole game. Taking a deep breath, Sophia hardened her voice and took the job. She told the Duke she fully grasped what was at stake, and honestly, knowing what that kid was capable of, she knew this was going to be the most brutal assignment of her life. Flash forward. It was finally time for Dale's 10th birthday bash. But this party was different. Heavy hitters from the Emperor's faction actually crashed the banquet, and stealing the spotlight was one extremely VIP guest. Enter the legendary Marquis Ulysse, rocking fiery red hair and flashing a dangerously soft smile. He strolled right up, radiating fake warmth, and purred that it was an absolute honor to finally meet young Master Dale. Before Ulysse even dropped his name, the rest of the crowd was already losing their minds over how insanely lavish the party was. People were whispering, completely mind-blown, that they were freezing up in the savage north, yet feasting like literal kings. One snobby aristocrat even admitted he felt like a total clown for sweating the duchy's distance from the capital. Make no mistake, these capital elites were the biggest dogs, barking under the emperor's banner. And them showing up out of nowhere, definitely not a coincidence. It was a massive, neon sign warning straight from the royal family. They were basically saying there was zero chance they'd just sit back after the ultimate disrespect shown to their precious sword saint. And the guy acting as their personal attack dog was currently bowing to Dale with a perfectly engineered, creepy-ass smile. Ulysse wasn't just anybody, he ran the Red Magic Tower, a hardcore faction absolutely obsessed with fire destruction and forcing order through sheer, unchecked power. To these pyromaniac mages, raw strength, and they didn't lose a wink of sleep over acting as the Emperor's personal weapons of mass destruction. Dale had unfortunately tangled with their kind way too many times in his past lives. Ulysse leaned in, dropping comments about hearing wild rumors regarding the kid's god-tier talent. He mentioned how the stories of a child single-handedly vaporizing an entire horde of orcs just to save a family knight at a measly 9 years old were absolutely mind-blowing. He buttered him up, claiming it was exactly the kind of flex you'd expect from the heir to the Black Duke. Unfazed Dale just offered a stiff, polite bow and hit him with a hollow thank you. Have a safe trip back, Marquis. Strolling alone down the echoing halls, Dale let out a heavy sigh. Faking a smile for these endless VIP compliments year after year was honestly exhausting. If it were completely up to him, he'd be out in the yard right now crossing blades and leveling up with Charlotte. But on paper, the girl was nothing more than his mom's personal maid. It would be an absolute disaster if word ever got out that the sword god's own flesh and blood was secretly polishing her combat skills. He was completely zoned out in his own world when a terrified shriek shattered the silence. A rough, gravelly voice barked at a girl to shut her mouth, spitting out that she was just some worthless nobody. Dale sprinted straight toward the chaos. A young maid was curled up on the cold stone, trembling and sobbing that she was under the direct protection of House Saxon. Looming over her, a bulky red-headed creep glared down with pure disgust, snapping that a low-level worker had zero right to even let the duchy's name cross her lips. Since everyone else was busy popping bottles for the young lord's birthday bash, he figured he'd sneak off and have his own twisted kind of fun. Backing the panicked girl into a corner, he barked at her to follow his orders. Dale crashed the scene instantly, demanding to know what kind of absolute mess this was. The guy immediately clocked the young master and started stumbling over his pathetic excuses, but Dale wasn't letting up for a second. Flashing a totally gross smirk, the creep then had the nerve to ask if the kid had ever spent any quality time with a lady before. He bragged that energy crackled in his palm as he summoned a glowing magic circle, flat out declaring he was rescuing the servant. Petro figured that in a world obsessed with strict social ladders, this kid would never actually have the guts to pull up on someone backed by the Empire. Boy, was he dead wrong. A razor-sharp shard of ice zipped past, grazing the man's cheek. Completely shook, Petro scrambled into the dirt, suddenly realizing he was 1 inch away from getting packed up. Dale stood his ground ice cold. He knew perfectly well that throwing hands with an Imperial lackey could trigger massive backlash, but he literally could not care less. Clutching his bleeding cheek, Petro screamed, demanding an explanation. Dale just cranked up the volume, barking at the guy to hit his knees and beg Miss Eve for forgiveness. She was a proud member of House Saxon, exactly like she had just told him. Petro spat back that he was literally the Emperor's royal proxy, and that disrespecting an Imperial envoy over some random maid was straight-up treason. Dale didn't miss a beat, instantly clapping back, asking if creeping on other people's staff was just standard Imperial behavior. Foaming at the mouth with pure rage, Petro shoved his finger in the kid's face. But right before things went completely nuclear, heavy footsteps echoed as backup rolled up to the scene. Totally blind to the new arrivals, Dale dropped a final warning. This was his absolute last chance to hit the floor. From the sidelines, Ulysses watched the whole drama unfold with a twisted little smirk, whispering to the Duke that they had front-row seats to a wild show. Alan crashed the party, strictly demanding to know who was starting beef. Dale laid it all out, exposing the creep for trying to mess with one of their family maids. The Duke scoffed, questioning if such petty drama really justified treating Lord Petro like trash. Petro scrambled to get up, but Dale instantly shut him down. Nobody gave him permission to stand. The kid then went off preaching that any high and mighty noble, visiting from the capital, was basically the Emperor's walking shadow. And this creep just dragged that holy name through the mud, by harassing a maid, something he absolutely was not going to let slide. Ulysses suddenly chimed in, practically applauding the young master's genius. He claimed Dale's logic was absolute perfection, and agreed that anyone flexing the Emperor's authority had no business acting like such a massive degenerate. While talking, he started pooling intense magical energy into his hand, whispering a single cursed word, Tawara. Locking his dead eyes onto Petro, he announced that this pathetic little worm was about to get packed up. Panicking, Petro scrambled to escape, desperately burning whatever stamina he had left. But it was game over. Scorching flames were already swallowing him whole. A massive blast of fire smacked him dead in the face, unleashing sheer agonizing torment as Petro was reduced to absolute ash. Ulysses coldly declared it was his absolute duty to execute anyone foolish enough to disrespect the imperial blood, dropping a heavy hint that his hopes for young Master Dale's destiny were sky high. Dale caught the threat, cloaked in that praise. Once the dust finally settled from the absolute chaos, the Emperor's lackeys cleared out of the fortress, letting a fragile silence wash over the estate. Hours later, a servant gently rouses the young master from his sleep. She steps up to whisper that morning has broken. Dale tosses her a quick thanks, but instantly catches the heavy sorrow clouding her eyes. He presses her, asking if something's eating at her. She bites her lip, freezing for a second before mumbling that serving him is her greatest privilege. Dale side-eyes the weirdly long pause for such a basic statement, yet he realizes this awkward vibe is his new normal. He brushes it off with a polite nod, playing it cool. But deep down, he knows exactly the kind of weight his name carries. As the firstborn heir to the Saxon duchy, he is locked in on weaponizing every single asset to crush the empire into dust. Cut to another scene. Alan pulls his kid aside for a serious heart-to-heart. He admits he always knew the boy was a genius, but points out his recent vibe has been undeniably off. Dale carefully probes his dad's actual thoughts, before breaking down his entire logic. Think about it, he argues. If that otherworldly hero hadn't died fighting Divine Sword Lord Bartel, the Empire's crosshairs would have instantly locked on to the Saxon territory. Alan raises an eyebrow at that massive claim. He demands to know where his kid's getting this insane confidence. Internally, Dale's sweating. He obviously can't reveal the terrifying truth that in his past life, he watched the Empire scheme against House Saxon firsthand, or that the hero was literally thrown away because his power got way too dangerous to leash. Instead, he spins a solid, bulletproof alibi. Look back to last year. When the hero totally crushed the Demon King, the Empire didn't even bother cleansing the darkness from the land. Nope, they just branded it imperial property and forced House Saxon to bleed their own cash dry trying to fix it. They pinned the entire mess on the Duke, and as long as that shadowy corruption sticks around, the family's vault is just a sinking ship. To make things worse, everyone from the capital to the outer borders started branding their bloodline as the, quote, Dark Clan. It's a textbook betrayal. Just like they trashed the hero, chopping off an internal threat like them is their obvious next move. Alan narrows his eyes. How exactly does his son know the hero was tossed aside? Dale plays it cool, claiming he pieced it together from some dusty old archives. On paper, the hero died a glorious death, clashing with Lord Bartle. But the grim reality, almost nobody knows the actual truth. The Duke is honestly blown away. Wrapping up his pitch, Dale drops the hammer. If his read on the situation is dead on, then the Empire's so-called justice is nothing but a twisted excuse to... Alan just stares, realizing his kid's brain operates on a completely different level. Taking a breath, he asks what exact move House Saxon needs to play next. Dale doesn't even blink. We can't coexist with them, he states flatly. Our survival literally depends on burning the Empire to the ground. For a second, Alan is completely paralyzed. He barely chokes out his son's name before his face goes dead serious, asking if Dale actually grasps the insane weight of those words. Dale quickly waves off the panic, clarifying he isn't plotting to rally troops and spark a rebellion tomorrow morning. He's mapping out a 10-year master plan. Right now, there are already scattered factions across the continent, practically begging for independence. Leaders who got backstabbed by the crown, exactly like the Duke. On top of that, the economy is absolutely tanking. Bandit raids are skyrocketing. And even with the continent supposedly unified, the war's toxic fallout just keeps mutating. Until the boiling point hits, House Saxon needs to silently hoard power, fortify their defenses, and quietly bankroll rebel movements everywhere else. Dale spills the entire blueprint, rambling on until the sun practically dips below the horizon. Finally catching his breath, he asks his dad for the verdict. A slow smirk creeps onto the Duke's face, quickly erupting into a full-blown laugh. Alan admits his son's genius is straight up unreal. The kid literally sees 10 steps ahead of the Duke himself. Filled with absolute pride, Alan swears he is beyond honored to be his father. And starting right now, Dale isn't just his eldest kid anymore. And he definitely isn't just a 10-year-old boy. From here on out, he gets the absolute respect demanded by the future lord of House Saxon. Treating him as an absolute equal, Alan drops the formalities entirely. He asks what their very first move should be. Seizing the perfect opening, Dale immediately asks for a green light to tackle the tower trial in Necropolis. It's a brutal gauntlet of duels, designed to rank the mages crazy enough to fight the tower's guardians. Anyone skilled enough to smash the high-tier guardians, they bag the right to become an elder. And whoever claws their way to the very top claims the legendary title of Master. Alan instantly frowns, warning him that this death trap is way too dangerous, and that he's terrified his kid won't make it out alive. Plus, it's insanely early. Dale hasn't even broken into the third magic circle yet. The boy fires back, promising he's about to hit that milestone real soon. The Duke reminds him that normal mages don't sniff the third circle until they're 20 years old. Even for a second circle prodigy, making that jump is an absolute nightmare. But Dale just locks eyes with his dad, completely unflinching. He insists this is the ultimate power play for House Saxon. If he flexes his real potential at the tower, it massively buffs his dad's political standing, giving the family a verified, terrifying heir, backing up their clout with facts, not just hyped-up rumors. Alan searches his eyes, asking if that's the real reason. Dale nods, holding the lie perfectly. The Duke cracks a soft smile, fully buying it. "I'll prove my worth," Dale promises. Fast forward a few days, and the camera pans to the chilling city of the dead Necropolis. 3 shadowy figures pull up to a colossal gate as a slick carriage rolls in. A boot steps onto the dirt. "Finally made it," someone mutters. The crowd instantly drops to their knees, bowing out of sheer terror for the great Black Duke. Meanwhile, Dale just lets out a massive yawn, still totally wiped out from the road trip. Watching everyone lose their minds bowing, he groans internally. Here we go again. They're doing way too much, treating him like pure royalty. The second the father-son duo steps onto the grounds, the whispers spread like wildfire. The bystanders gossip that the kid is an absolute magic prodigy, even if he looks like he needs a nap. Another voice chimes in, hyping up that his sword skills rival the Duke's elite knights. A blonde hotshot named Velik steps up, totally flexing his status as the Academy's absolute top-tier graduate. Because of that, he claims he is the only one worthy of crushing the tower trial. Right then, a girl glides over, bowing deeply to pay her respects to the Lord of the Tower. Her name is Eris. The Duke drops a cool comment about how long it has been since they last crossed paths. See, Eris is not just anybody, she is a high-ranking Tower Elder. Serving as the Secretary General, she practically runs the whole show, whenever the Black Duke is away. Alan gives her the rundown, telling her it is her job to back Dale up during this deadly trial. Our boy Dale steps forward, giving her a super polite introduction. Eris nods and tells her lord to follow her lead. The Elder drops the news that all 59 Academy graduates are already lined up and hyped. The heavy doors swing open, and man, what a sight. A massive mob of rivals is totally locked in and ready for blood. Eris strides up to the balcony. She gives a quick shout out to the crowd, introduces herself, and lays down the brutal rules for the Dark Magic Tower's first floor. First up, everybody needs to check the life point collar strapped around their own neck. This trial, it is a straight-up battle royale. Each collar packs a protective shield and just one single life point. You gotta use the creepy corpses scattered around the arena to smash an opponent, which triggers their shield and totally wipes out their life point. Securing a clean hit eliminates them and scores you 1 extra point. Racking up 3 points is your golden ticket to the next level. But catch this, using artifacts is strictly banned, and trying it gets you instantly kicked out. Dale absorbs all this insane info. He figures out real quick that this whole setup is just a ruthless filter designed to weed out the weaklings in record time. Off to the side, some random guy whispers about how crazy it is that the young lord already hit the 3rd circle at his age. Velik smirks and fires back. That is exactly why he is target number 1. One of the nervous competitors hesitates, asking if ganging up on the young lord is even allowed. The blonde dude flashes a villainous smile, telling them to chill. He says the second they stepped into this arena, everybody became fair game. The starting signal blasts through the air, and plot twist. Every single competitor locks their magic circles dead onto Dale. One guy furiously pumps energy into his arm. He shapes a glowing purple orb and slams it into the dirt, summoning a hideous undead. The rest follow suit. Demonic freaks claw their way out, and deadly spells start flying. A whole pack of heavily armed monsters charges straight at our boy. A crazy fast zombie swinging a rusty machete closes the gap in a heartbeat. Dale throws up a shield to tank the hit, but wait, his shield did not block the follow-up strike. A totally random undead spawns out of thin air and parries the fatal blow with its massive claws. Nobody even noticed him cast that summon, while casually flexing his dark magic. Dale was secretly weaving water magic all over the battlefield like an absolute boss. His newly spawned creature dashes forward and violently shreds one of the enemy undead into pieces. The guy who summoned it loses his mind, absolutely raging. How dare some brat wreck his masterpiece? But Dale's monster is an absolute tank, casually deflecting every single attack. Plus, it is glowing with icy armor, custom built by Dale himself, making the beast practically indestructible. Velik stomps forward, throwing a massive fit, and demanding to know if water magic is basically cheating. He whines that only dark magic, like raising and buffing the dead, should be legal here. Dale just calmly shifts his gaze to Eris, and challenges them, asking if there is any actual rule outlawing other magic types. The deathmatch keeps rolling without a single pause. Yeah, that is answer enough. Backed into a total corner, Velik barks at his squad to stall the monster, while he rushes Dale head-on. In his arrogant mind, ganging up on one dude is a guaranteed win. Dale's brain goes into overdrive, calculating the rules in a split second. No artifacts allowed, so he has got to improvise. A crazy, super risky plan clicks into place. He dives straight into the war zone, dodging and weaving through the monstrous chaos. He deliberately gets dangerously close to a knife-wielding zombie. For a split second, it looks like game over. But nope, he snatches the blade bare-handed, supercharging his other fist with raw magic. He rips the weapon away and blasts the zombie with an explosive, energy-packed hook. He stares at his stolen prize for a heartbeat. Then he goes full savage with it. Velik and another lackey freeze in pure shock, watching an undead get sliced up like butter. They instantly assume it is some overpowered secret weapon. But what these clueless guys do not realize is that Dale totally re-engineered the monster's bones from the inside, supercharging the blade's durability to the max. The absolute bloodbath rages on. Dale flashes across the battlefield like literal lightning, slicing down haters left and right with insane, rapid-fire precision. Velik can only watch his jaw basically glued to the floor, seeing his own personal army get clapped, one by one. It literally makes zero sense for a magic caster to have sword skills this cracked. With the meat shields totally wiped out, Dale corners Velik. The blonde bully finally realizes he is completely doomed, and actually starts begging for mercy. Dale just smirks, telling him to chill since he is not literally going to die today. Then, with one buttery smooth strike to the head, he shuts the whole fight down. Velik hits the dirt completely knocked out cold, while his precious life points sit there, completely untouched. Dale solo clears the round, leaving everyone else in the dust. He smirks, scanning the empty room. Listen up, because that was just the warm-up. Phase 2 of the tower trial is officially a go. The mission Crush the Guardian, a hulking flesh golem. Usually the first round survivors would team up to take this tank down. But since our boy wiped the floor with the entire lobby, he's taking on this boss battle completely solo. There's a twist. This time magic is totally unlocked, but artifacts still off limits, which means his overpowered cloak stays benched. Honestly, it's the perfect setup. Dale finally gets to unleash his third magic circle and go absolutely all out. The golem charges with zero hesitation. It drops a massive, bone-crushing right hook, shaking the ground like a literal earthquake. The monster actually grins, thinking it just one-shot him. But then reality hits. The beast glances down to see its own fist engulfed in blazing purple, melting its flesh away. Dale had silently planted the spell before the punch even connected. He calls this nasty trick corrupt acceleration, a completely custom skill Dale cooked up himself. It's insanely rare for a kid his age to invent magic. Instead of an instant one-tap, this spell slowly rots the target from the inside out. Back in his past life, Dale figured out a brutal truth when fighting monsters. Biological warfare is pretty much the ultimate meta. Second by second, the sickening stench of decaying flesh radiates from the crumbling golem. Now you finally grasp the true horror of this magic, he taunts. Dale absolutely speedruns the trial, shattering every single record all the way up to Phase 10. The system hooks him up with a solid 4-day vacation as a reward, leaving the rest of the candidates absolutely speechless. The remaining 59 players are forced into a brutal reassessment, while our guy is already chilling. Later that night, when the dust finally settles, Dale is just zoning out by a fountain. Suddenly, a familiar voice calls his name. He spins around, totally caught off guard. It's Sophia. She walks up, hyping up his insane performance during the trial. Dale plays it cool, telling her he only clutched up because of her teaching. His master flashes a warm, genuinely proud smile. Then Dale's tone drops. He looks her dead in the eye, uses her actual name, and drops a bombshell. He flat out asks her on a date. There's a massive festival lighting up the city tonight, and he wants her by his side. Sophia freezes for a second, her cheeks turning slightly pink before she actually says yes. She figures hanging out is totally harmless, even though she secretly thinks her student is way too young to understand the heavy romantic vibes of a real date. The Necropolis Festival is absolutely buzzing with chaotic energy. Bright fireworks are popping off, painting the night sky. Sophia asks if he's exhausted from the trial grind. Dale brushes it off, explaining he still has days of downtime before the next stage. A slightly awkward, heavy silence falls between them. The glowing full moon hangs high, and the whole vibe is straight out of a movie. Sophia takes in the view with a soft smile. Dale realizes that holding a basic conversation with her has always been a bit of a struggle, but it was never weird. It's always been this peaceful with his master, probably because of the massive amount of trust she has in him. Flashback to a few days ago. The exact second Dale hit that third magic circle, he collided head-on with the ultimate nightmare Sophia had warned him about, the mind space. Deep in focus, dark crimson blood started trickling from his nose. To break his own limits, he had to force out way more mana than his second circle could handle. Triggering a dangerous mana backflow was the only possible trick to unlock the third tier. It's a brutal process for an adult, but for a kid, straight up impossible. Dale felt a crushing agony tear through his chest, like a frozen blade piercing straight into his heart. He stared down at his violently shaking sword, and in a flash, his consciousness was ripped into another dimension. A dead, frozen wasteland, stretching out endlessly. Rotting bare trees scattered across the snow. Completely disoriented, he glanced down at his hands, only to see the rugged body of his past life. He was trapped inside his own mind space. His inner world was completely shattered, torn violently between the kid he is now and the warrior he used to be. It was just a cold, endless void. And floating in that dark emptiness, his master's hand was the only lifeline he had left to cling to. Honestly, maybe that's the real reason he desperately wanted her in his world. Snapping back to reality, Dale hypes himself up and just blurts it out. He looks Master Sophia in the eyes and confesses that he's in love with her. She stammers, completely mind-blown, having zero clue how to react. She actually asks him to repeat it. Heart pounding, he says it again. Sophia's expression softens into a warm, gentle smile, before pulling him into a tight, comforting, almost sisterly hug. She whispers that she truly understands his feelings, and that she cares deeply for him too. Resting in her arms, Dale silently thanks her, finally realizing what it means to have a second life. That definitely comes in handy. Fast forward a few days. The morning sun is absolutely blazing when the day of the tower trials finally drops. Post-festival, zero progress. His master is totally still treating him like a clueless 10-year-old kid with a harmless little crush. So Dale completely shifts gears to lock in on the trials. The challenge, an all-out magic duel. Win and you move up. Standing in Dale's way is Elbert Rosenheim, a totally cracked master of the third circle. And this guy makes it painfully obvious right out the gate he is not pulling punches just because he's fighting a kid. In this round, it's a total free-for-all with artifacts and magic, meaning even stacking defense amulets won't save you from getting absolutely wrecked. With the training wheels off, Dale is hyped to finally flex the massive skill gap between them. But before he can even blink, a massive wave of purple energy blasts straight at him. The spell detonates on impact, kicking up a massive, thick mushroom cloud of debris. Elbert smirks, bragging that he isn't some weak-level student, and Dale's cocky attitude dies right here. Suddenly, a swarm of glowing magic circles pop up around the mage, spitting out a rapid-fire barrage of pitch-black arrows. Elbert is dead set on the kid not surviving this onslaught. Notching up one more dark arrow, Elbert mocks him, telling him that's what happens when a rookie gets way too full of himself. He unloads the entire barrage, dying to see if the kid gets flattened. But Dale, he doesn't even bother putting up a shield. He just weaves, gliding past every single strike with insane precision. Zero wasted movements. Launching a sneak attack before the bell rings was incredibly dirty, but the judges just sit back. They're way too invested in seeing exactly what this kid is capable of. Honestly, this exact type of garbage is why Dale absolutely despises mages. Grip tightening on his grimoire, Elbert puts on this ridiculously extra, super cringy performance to summon a horde of undead ghouls, barking at them to bow to his command. It's literally painful to watch, but honestly, the guy's raw power is easily top tier compared to the scrubs Dale fought earlier. The monsters rush in. Dale just dances around them, not even breaking a sweat. Elbert starts running his mouth again, asking how long the kid plans on playing tag, and if dodging is his grand master plan to win. A hulking zombie swings a massive axe at him, but bam, a razor-sharp beam of purple energy shreds straight through its throat. That same dark energy violently chains outward, instantly vaporizing the rest of the horde. Elbert keeps on smirking, completely oblivious. But the second those ghouls drop, they trigger a massive self-destruct sequence. A massive blast rattles the arena, kicking up a blind storm of dust, swallowing the entire stage in smoke. Thinking he just caught a body, the mage proudly claims his W. But when the dust clears, Dale is totally gone. Panic hits. Elbert wildly looks around, completely mind-blown at how the kid vanished. Then Dale's chilling voice echoes across the stadium, pulling a cheap shot on a literal kid. Yeah, that is maximum coward behavior. The mage is spinning in circles, totally lost. Suddenly Dale materializes right behind his back, smirking at Elbert's terrified face. He sarcastically claps for that cute little sneak attack. Shrouded in a terrifying ghost-like shadow, Dale steps closer, dropping a brutal reality check. Elbert is not even in the same league. Suffocating waves of dark magic crush the mage into the dirt, looking like it's about to swallow him alive. Dale just watches with a frosty little smile as the shadowy demons creep, casually reminding his shadows not to completely shred the guy. The crowd is absolutely paralyzed with fear, feeling like they're trapped in a living nightmare. Elbert gets ragdolled and dragged across the floor, literal seconds away from being eaten alive. Dale playfully jokes that his little pets must be acting up because they're starving. Utterly broken, the mage starts crying and begging for mercy. With a lazy flick of his wrist, Dale flashes a magic seal and calls off the hounds. Elbert faceplants into the floor, completely knocked out cold. Round 1 is officially over. Dale casually pops his hands on his hips and shouts, "Who wants next?" Half the roster instantly forfeits, completely terrified to fight whatever the hell that was. Fast forward to the finals, and basically the entire bracket has quit. Dale breezes through the tournament, barely sweating through one. Right after that, he completely levels up and perfects all 3 of his magic rings, and starts speed-running the floor bosses like it's nothing. But the second he hits floor 20, a genuinely tough boss spawns. A massive, headless Death Knight riding a phantom steed, handcrafted by an Elder of the Black Tower. This monster is on a completely different level from his usual trash mobs. For anyone else, this would definitely be game over. But honestly, Dale is so over repeating the same boring attack patterns. He stares down the heavy cavalry charge as the whole arena holds its breath. But then, the wildest thing happens. The monstrous knight hits the brakes, drops to one knee, and bows down completely, like it just met its true, dark lord. Dale just watches, completely deadpan. Inside his mental domain, it's just him and the knight. He coldly drops a single order. Delete yourself. Without a single second of hesitation, the boss actually does it. Plunging its own greatsword straight through its chest, the massive armor crumples to the floor. Even Dale is low-key stunned. The fact that a summoned beast just hard betrayed its own creator to obey him doesn't feel like a big deal to Dale, but the absolute shell-shocked screaming from the crowd definitely says otherwise. The audience is absolutely shell-shocked. A summon, ditching its creator to bow to someone else, only screams one thing. Dale is officially operating on the exact same wavelength as the head elder of the Black Tower himself. Smirking, he calls it quits right there. Flexing any harder is completely pointless. The onlookers whisper in total confusion, totally baffled by the sudden drop. But Dale knows perfectly well that there is an invisible boundary he cannot push past. Overstepping that mark would be like kicking up a massive hornet's nest. The trial wraps up right then and there. The towering monolith literally hums in approval, sealing his legendary run. The moment the Duke steps onto the scene, the entire room drops. The Black Tower bends the knee to his absolute authority. It is not just the high-class elites of House Saxon, but every single spellcaster, even the ancient elders, bow their heads low to the warlord and his heir. Thanks to the absolute god-tier plays from the young boss, the fractured frozen wastelands of the north finally start stitching themselves together. We cut to the brutal northern frontier of the empire, deep in the Duchy of Saxon. A frontline vanguard blitzes ahead, spear-locked, and skewering 2 massive greenskins with deadly perfection. A second gladiator hoists his bloodied blade, screaming his lungs out, roaring that he spills blood for the young boss Dale and the glory of House Saxon. Fresh off his insane tower victory, our boy gets the green light straight from the Duke to captain a massive wipeout mission against the monster raid. Pikemen, heavy hitters, and ironclad cavalry charge into the meat grinder, all following his tempo. It is a wildly heavy crown to wear for a kid who is literally only 10 years old. But honestly, nobody is batting an eye. Everyone knows he is the stone-cold heir to the Black Duke. Dale is systematically bringing the entire north to heel. A crisp, cloudless sky blankets the war-torn lands, skimming the aftermath debrief. The kill feed shows 145 beasts absolutely wiped off the map. The big man questions the damage to his riders, and the young Prodigy casually replies that only 3 guys caught a couple of light scratches. Raising an eyebrow, his old man presses him, asking if he threw down some barrier spells to keep them alive. The kid does not miss a beat. He claims it was 100% raw steel and the pure skill of House Saxon. Flashing a proud razor-sharp smirk, the boss hypes his boy up. Helmet watches from the sidelines, admitting the kid has massively leveled up mentally. perfectly sliding into the boss seat. After all, he is the master who drilled Dale on blade work, mind games, squad tactics, and pure battlefield chess. The inevitable moment when our guy finally claims his own piece of the map is right around the corner, and just the thought of it gets his blood completely pumping. High-stakes grinds are exactly what keep him totally locked in. Hard cut to Charlotte, who is going absolute try-hard mode in the training yard. She rips out a fierce battle cry, launching herself forward as her steel shreds the wind, aiming dead center for the face of her sparring partner. He effortlessly weaves around the strike and snaps back with a harsh count, but she catches the impact by the absolute skin of her teeth. Dale has seriously buffed his agility stats, turning into an absolute blur that she can barely track. Despite the insane gap, she catches a nasty opening her blade, shaving dangerously close to his jawline. Backing off Dale actually gives her props, admitting she is leveling up fast. She just rolls her eyes, shooting back that whenever he acts so high and mighty, he sounds like an old boomer, which totally cracks him up. He chuckles, asking if he has been roasting her a bit too hard lately. Shaking it off, Charlotte suddenly drops a truth bomb. Ever since our boy unlocked his third magic ring and cleared the 20th floor of the tower, the whole vibe has shifted. The entire castle is treating him like royalty, literally just glazing him up 24/7. She squints, asking if that fake energy does not drive him crazy. Flashing a chill smile, he tells her to take a breath, confidently promising that she is about to get ridiculously overpowered herself soon. Keeping in mind the girl is barely 10 years old, her raw specs are actually insane. But she is absolutely not having that patronizing talk. Glaring daggers, she snaps at him to quit babying her. Dale instantly claps back, reminding her she literally is a child. The fiery blonde jams a finger right at his nose, spitting back that he is in the exact same boat. Caught totally off guard, he points to his own chest like, "Who, me?" He then straight up claims that mentally, he is already a full-grown man. Totally over his ego, Charlotte completely kills the brain-dead argument. Fast forward a bit, and Helmut pulls his star pupil aside, hyping up that today's masterclass is going to be incredibly heavy. He is passing down the legendary hammer and anvil meta. Check this out. The heavy riders blitz down both wings, looping tightly to totally box the enemy squad in, while the foot soldiers hold the aggro right in the dead center. It is literally like forging hot steel, smashing your prey mercilessly between a heavy hammer and a rock-solid anvil, leaving zero escape routes. Instantly, Dale connects the dots, realizing this ruthless play only works because they have the elite black cavalry on their roster. Deep down he nods. The core mechanics of Slaughter never truly change. Spotting an opening in the conversation, our guy pivots hard, grilling his master about how the blonde rival is actually stacking up. Helmut keeps it real, explaining that her physical conditioning is in a totally different lane compared to the guys, but she is seriously putting in the work. Her basic mechanics are absolutely rock solid, and any day now she is going to unlock the signature aura skills of the Saxon bloodline. Still, there is one massive red flag eating at the veteran. Dale instantly reads his mind. It is her pure compatibility with the brutal family meta. Look at it this way, just like casters filter their mana pools through magic rings, knights forge their battle aura by grinding their inner core. You have got heavy hitter squads like the Black Cavalry, handling massive war zone raids, and the terrifying Night Raven Order locked into the Northern Defense, a faction completely obsessed with raw, unadulterated brute force. The massive glitch here. Charlotte is maxed out entirely on speed and agility. Even with her freakish talent, she might cap out at the rank of the 7th sword. But mathematically, she might never hit the absolute endgame tier. Ironically, her own dad used to sit comfortably in one of those god tiers. Known across the entire realm for his god tier skills, Dale hoists the spring blade and gets lost in thought. If that legendary combat style was still around, but that technique vanished into thin air when the ancient knights fell. Still, one massive question hangs in the air. Is that fighting style actually gone for good? While Dale grinds non-stop to build up his rep through brutal battles and heavy duties, the perfect moment arrives to flex the insane results of his training. Smack right in the middle of a high-stakes meeting, the Duke grills his scouts over some sketchy new intel. A frantic messenger drops a bomb. Baron Volker, the lord ruling the next zone over, is straight up claiming their copper mine, and just declared an official turf war. Honestly, it sounds totally unhinged for a low-tier noble to pick a fight with a powerhouse like Saxon. But the plot thickens. If they refuse to cough up the mine and actually take the bait, the Grand Duke of Brandenburg might just team up with the Baron to grab a slice of the loot. Plus, there's a massive chance the Order of St. Magdalena gets dragged into the mess. That thought alone has Dale visibly sweating. All signs point to one thing. The enemy definitely hasn't forgotten the brutal beatdown they took last time. A brand new bloodbath is brewing. Ever since that fateful day, Count Brandenburg has been nursing his grudge like a festering wound. Kicking off an all-out war was way too sketchy, so he decided to pull strings out in the borderlands, a tactical sweet spot where he could keep his own hands completely clean. Dale steps right up to his dad and drops his request with zero hesitation. He wants to personally spearhead the front line, side by side with the elite Saxon knights. The Duke shuts him down instantly. He tells the kid it's way too early, warning him that fighting an actual human war is a whole different beast compared to just hunting down monsters. The boy seriously needs to check his ego. Pivoting back to the messenger, the Duke calms Baron Greenbelt's nerves, swearing on his life that the mine is totally safe. The guy bows in thanks, looking massively relieved, but still sweating bullets. A bit later, Dale totally vents to Helmet, swearing up and down that he'd completely carry the battle better than anyone. The seasoned knight totally gets why he's tilted, but reminds the kid that the Duke definitely has his reasons. And trying to kill the awkward vibe, Helmet reveals a surprise training tool for the day, whipping out a board game. Dale instantly clocks it as a hardcore version of chess, even if this world calls it something else entirely. Helmet breaks it down. The game is basically a pure simulation of real-life warfare, packed with insanely complex mechanics. But if the kid seriously wanted to level up his big brain tactics, this was his golden ticket. Dale snatches the board and completely bolts. Helmet just stands there, totally baffled by the kid's crazy reaction. Minutes later, the boy bursts into his dad's office, board in hand, pitching a raw, high-stakes deal. If he clutches a win in this game, he gets the green light to join the turf war. He fiercely argues that real combat isn't just about raw muscle. It's all about high-level strategy, begging his dad to test his actual IQ. Helmet tries to panic apologize for the chaos, but the Duke snaps his hand up, silencing him, and locks in the challenge. Win, and the kid hits the battlefield. Lose, and he buries the idea forever. The showdown kicks off. Helmet sweats over every single move, and as the turns stack up, his jaw practically drops. The young heir is playing out of his mind, completely outclassing everyone's expectations. After an absolutely brutal, nail-biting match, Dale clutches the win 2-1, totally defying the Duke's massive advantage in both troop numbers and map control. Smirking with pure confidence, the kid asks if the deal still stands. His dad just bursts out laughing, demanding to know exactly how long his son has been grinding this game. Dale plays it cool, claiming he dug up an ancient guide in the library years ago and has been secretly studying the strats ever since. It was a total bluff, obviously, but it worked perfectly as a cover. The Duke slowly rises from his chair and declares that a man's word is law. In the name of their house, he officially hands over command of the elite knights, straight to his son for the upcoming bloodbath. But he drops a cold, hard warning. With the entire honor of Saxon on the line, losing is literally not an option. He glares dead into the kid's eyes, asking heavily if he's truly ready to carry that crushing burden. Dale doesn't even flinch. He just asks for his father's faith. The Duke nods, admitting he's seriously hyped to see this intense training pay off in blood. Meanwhile, over at Malbert Castle, the gloomy fortress of Grand Duke Brandenburg, the tension is thick enough to cut with a knife. Brandenburg is fiercely grilling Philip over wild rumors that Saxon's young heir is actually leading the vanguard. Totally baffled, he demands to know what that reckless party animal kid thinks he's trying to pull off. Philip just sneers with pure disgust. Brushing the enemy off as a pathetic little squad, he begs for the green light to absolutely obliterate the cocky, delusional brat. Smash Brandenburg slams his fist on the heavy oak table, instantly silencing him. Boiling with rage, he screams that Philip is massively underestimating their enemy in the most brain-dead way imaginable. That boy isn't just a kid, he's a literal monster. A freak of nature that not even Brandenburg's own flesh and blood could ever hope to rival. Boiling with rage, he trashed Philip as dead weight. He kicked himself for not handling Charlotte way sooner, let alone waiting a decade or a century. Even so, he tossed Philip the reins for the upcoming bloodbath, but it was purely for show. Behind the curtain, Deputy Lord Milvas would be pulling the strings. Philip was nothing but a glorified mascot. The Duke ordered Milvas to stash his boy far away from the actual crossfire. Deep down, Brandenburg knew stepping to a literal kid right now was a bad look. Plus, a gnawing suspicion was creeping in that this entire mess was Duke Saxon's masterclass from day one. Meanwhile, Helmet and Dale were popping off, hyping up their massive dub in the game. Fast forward a few days. The heavy iron gates of Greenbelt Castle groaned open. The Baron running the mines was sweating bullets as heavily armored heavyweights marched onto his turf. When they announced the young commander, the crowd's jaws hit the floor. This kid looked way too young, sparking whispers about whether he could even lift a blade, let alone swing it. The Baron plastered on a fake brave face, claiming Dale's backup was a massive relief. But inside, he was low-key. Putting a 10-year-old in charge of the cavalry felt like absolute suicide. scrambling to stall. He pitched a lavish welcome feast. Dale shut that down instantly. Zero time to waste, the boy snapped, totally blinding the host. Skipping the pleasantries, Dale pressed cold steel right against the Baron's throat. His only mission, inspecting the troops right now. Then he dropped a bombshell question. Out of everyone here, who is the absolute strongest? A ginger warrior shoved his way to the front, flexing as the local top dog. Sporting a gnarly scar across his face, he cockily bragged that nobody alive could ever put him in the dirt. But honestly, Dale's ice-cold swagger was rattling him hardcore. Dale just sized the guy up dead-eyed. Next to him, the Baron practically melted in relief as the steel finally left his throat. Dale read the room instantly. These guys totally thought he was a joke, and honestly, fair enough. They just handed a do-or-die war over to a 10-year-old. Without blinking, he slammed his blade into the dirt. The disrespect. It went both ways, he announced. If they wanted to trash his skills, he was definitely putting the Baron. And the only way to settle the beef, bloody steel. A chilling smirk carved its way across his face as he stated pure facts. Their absolute best night was literally wasted. That alone proved this army was complete trash. The scarred warrior snapped, yanking his weapon out, pointing the tip right at Dale. He barked out his name, "Hey Bark," his voice trembling with rage. He bet his entire knightly pride on proving the local army wasn't a joke. Dale just kept smirking. They locked eyes, the air thick enough to cut. Dale casually asked if Haybark recognized his blade. The ginger scoffed, claiming he knew the freakish weapon's hype, while secretly sweating over whether this brat had a hidden trump card. But before his brain could catch up, Haybark blitzed forward, launching a savage full-power slash. Smack. Dale stopped the massive strike barehanded, locking it down with pure magic. The kid didn't even flinch. His swagger stayed untouched while Haybark mentally crashed. With a casual shove, Dale brushed off the fatal blow like it was nothing. He scanned the knight. No aura on the blade. So this guy wasn't even top tier. Still, Dale figured he'd match that desperate energy and give the tryhard a proper beatdown. A glowing arcane seal flared in his left palm. Haybark froze, watching pitch-black energy erupt from the dirt, rushing him instantly. He swung wildly, trying to hack apart the shadows, but his steel phased right through. The crushing aura spiked, totally shattering his focus. Dale just held the spell, looking almost bored. This so-called champion was incredibly weak compared to his big talk. Suddenly, even Dale blinked in shock. Haybark screamed in pure agony and face-planted into the dirt, totally wrecked. The fight ended in a blink, leaving everyone completely stunned. Nobody could wrap their heads around it. The supposed undisputed king of the region got flatlined in literal seconds. The Baron lost his goddamn mind. Screaming, he demanded to know why Dale would cripple his VIP warrior right before 0 hour. Closing the distance, Dale clapped back with pure ice. With garbage skills like that, how Saxon would end up soloing the entire war anyway? It was absolutely pathetic for the Baron to just sit back and chill while better men bled for him. If that joke was their peak strength, they were undeniably doomed. How Saxon would never blink when it came to shielding its loyal vassals but letting your own army rot was unforgivable. Every single person had to bleed for victory. Staring them down, he laid out an absolute ultimatum. Until the real clash kicked off, his squad would be the literal sword for this territory, and these cowards needed to make a choice right freaking now. It was a brutal ultimatum. Fall in line behind him. The choice is obvious. One by one, the battered soldiers dropped to their knees, pledging their undying loyalty to the young commander. Fast forward to midnight. Helena tosses and turns, sick with anxiety, while the Duke gently tries to soothe her nerves. Gently stroking her cheek, he whispers that their boy is hiding a whole lot of untapped potential. He hints that the kid's destiny is completely off the charts. Flashing a warm smile, he doubles down on his total faith in him. To him, the young lord is dead set to conquer this entire world. Meanwhile, tucked away in his bedroom, Dale is doing some heavy thinking. Up until now, he had been living under a rock, totally clueless about the bigger picture. But now, his eyes are wide open. He is also dead convinced that the Holy Swordsman was already fully aware of this wasteland's garbage condition. Dumping him in this specific barony was 100% a setup. Cut to the next morning. The blazing sun is already baking the cloudless sky. Haybark stumbles into view, completely gassed, and crushing beneath the weight of a massive boulder begging for a break. Instantly, another knight rips into him. He blasts him for being utterly pathetic, and barks at him to keep pushing. Watching from the shadows, Dale just silently absorbs the scene. He spots that even at Phase 1 of boot camp, the redhead is already tapping out. Man, it is going to take a literal miracle to whip the Greenbelt Barony's squad into fighting shape. Plus, he figures it is high time to dispatch a courier over to the Parker Barony and toss out a treaty offer. Not that he is waving a white flag, but before the real slaughter kicks off, there is a certain VIP he absolutely needs to cross paths with. A few hours slip by, and we jump straight to the meetup spot. Slap bang on the borderline, a massive oak table dominates the clearing. Dale claims the boss seat at the very end. He is totally chilled out, internally calculating every single variable. The math is already locked in. In just a handful of weeks, an unstoppable bloodbath is going down. The St. Madeleine Knights are currently light years away on some continent-spanning crusade. They are running on fumes for rations, and a surprise ambush is pretty much guaranteed. Add in the fact that Baron Parker's heavy cavalry is an absolute nightmare to deal with. Suddenly a herald hypes up the arrival of young Master Philip. Dale totally called it. He knew exactly which pawn they would push forward. Philip struts in acting like he owns the universe, a complete joke of a commander. But trailing right behind him like a shadow is the actual mastermind of this war, Milvis. The second the spoiled brat parks it in his chair, Dale casually throws out a greeting. Philip smirks like a total edgelord, tossing his hand out just to mock him. So after all that big talk, you still came crawling for a truce. Terrified of getting wiped out, Dale does not even blink. Slicing through the garbage, he demands to know why they even bothered showing up. Just as Philip opens his big mouth, Dale brutally shuts him down. He makes it painfully obvious that the question was never meant for him. He is not wasting his breath on a glorified hood ornament. He is speaking directly to the actual boss in the room, Milvis, the legendary Sword of Chastity. The vibe instantly turns insanely awkward. Both enemies bristle with rage, but Dale just sits back, owning the room. He points out that there is zero chance the Holy Swordsman would hand the reins of a war zone to an absolute scrub. Milvis scrambles to defuse the ticking bomb, begging Philip not to fall for the bait. But internally, Milvis is freaking out. How on earth does this kid know? Top secret intel about the Count utterly despising his own flesh and blood. And Dale just casually dropped that nuke on the table without flinching. Panicking, Milvis barks that this meeting is officially dead. Philip violently smashes his fists on the wood, screaming for a fast surrender. But Dale just keeps twisting the knife. He mockingly asks if Philip needs his babysitter's permission just to breathe, basically calling him a pathetic lapdog. He heavily implies that the one pulling the strings is not Philip, but Milvis. Honestly, it looks like the pet just slapped a leash on its owner. The veteran knight desperately tries to salvage the situation, but the sheer fury has completely hijacked the room. Dale simply kicks back, eating up the chaos. Reclining in his seat, with his hands locked behind his head, he keeps poking the bear, absolutely addicted to the toxic friction he just sparked between them. Boom. Then he drops his real agenda. He never gave a single damn about making a deal. This entire stunt was a calculated mind game, designed to completely shatter their internal command structure. Dale signals for bail and casually tells Milvis to take a hike for a second. The long-haired guy dips out of the room, flashing a chillingly polite grin. Dale proposes a little one-on-one chat. After all, they are the big shot generals calling the shots in this slaughter. It is only fair they hash this out, face to face. Philip's expression is literally twitching with sheer anger, but trying to fake some alpha energy. The blonde aristocratic brat fully swallows the hook. He barks at Milvis to get the hell out of the room immediately. The knight frantically tries to talk some sense into his boss, but Philip is completely blinded by ego. Deep down, Milvis knows they just walked straight into a slaughterhouse of a trap. Backed into a corner, Milvis reluctantly complies. Now locked in a stare-down with his furious rival Dale, smoothly claims he only set this whole thing up because he holds a wild card guaranteed to make Philip fold. The pitch is dead simple. If the St. Madeleine Knights completely abort this war and pack up right now, the Saxon bloodline will foot the entire bill and supply their journey back home. Philip shoots up and smashes his fists against the oak table. He spits that this is a joke of a demand, not a real deal. Dale throws out a mock apology for striking a nerve, then doubles down on his ultimatum. If the legions refuse to fall back, they are getting completely obliterated, and both the divine swordsman's legendary clout and the young master's legacy will be stomped right into the dirt. This right here might be Philip's final shot to salvage his pride. Philip glares, growling that Milvis called it. This punk was just dragging him for clout all along. A cocky smirk spreads across Dale's face. He casually drops that it's tragic the guy is so blind, considering this was legitimately his ultimate lifeline. Because when the dust settles, the loser, tanking the blame for this massacre, won't be Milvis. It's gonna fall entirely on the Count's absolutely useless, pathetic heir. Philip's lips curl into a sinister, unhinged grin. He brushes off the threat, snarling that the clock is ticking for an ego-tripping brat, exactly like Dale. Not missing a beat, Dale flashes a chilling smile back, taunting the blonde to cling to that blind arrogance while he still can. Fast forward a bit since that massively botched sit-down over in Baron Greenbelt's lands. Philip aggressively grills his scouts for intel on the opposition's march. One of the sentries nervously blurts out that the Saxon vanguard is already rolling out. Philip grinds his teeth in thought. The phantom of Dale's icy glare and zero-flinch swagger from the meetup haunts him. For a literal kid, that boy definitely wasn't giving off rookie energy. But that right there is the golden ticket. While Dale is still just a 10-year-old, Philip can violently rip this weed out by the roots before it spreads. Amped up on adrenaline, he barks orders at his troops, swearing they are about to teach this toddler a brutal lesson in shutting up. Meanwhile, deep in the Saxon camp, Dale's spy flags that the hostiles are aggressively pushing north. Dale rolls his shoulder, tightening his iron grip on his blade, and announces to his vanguard that it is officially go time. Today they bleed to prove why their legacy is legendary. The war horn blows. A scout blasts the instrument, dropping the green light for total carnage, and both legions surge forward like a tidal wave. Warriors sprinting into the meat grinder from all angles. The wasteland instantly erupts with blood-curdling shrieks and ringing steel as the first casualties are butchered within literal seconds. The blonde general scopes out the bloodbath and screams for the first cavalry to plunge into the fray. Their absolute priority is to bottleneck the Night Raven Knights and completely choke out the Saxon Blitz. But his grunts are completely clueless about the raw firepower of those elite knights, forcing him to plant himself dead in the heart of the phalanx, keeping a safe buffer from the actual slaughter. Baron Parker's squad aggressively sweeps the left flank, with orders to totally paralyze Greenbelt's mounted units in their tracks, while Brandenburg's heavy hitters gear up to blindside the enemy's core. It's an insanely risky gamble, but the squad's hype is off the charts. Nobody is letting this golden shot slide. Melvin totally grasps the lethal stakes of this play. The opposing savages are absolutely feral to defend the Count's honor, and the pure mayhem dominating the dirt proves it. Right in the thick of the blood and fog, a massive wildcard drops. A dominating aura crashes the front lines, making battle-hardened veterans physically recoil. It isn't sheer panic, but absolute shock. Young Master Dale has literally stepped into the trenches himself. His roar slices right through the ringing steel, demanding absolute zero surrender, commanding them to bleed out for the Saxon crest. Seeing their lord in the mud, the troops' adrenaline violently spikes. The blonde commander stalks the chaos from a ridge, immediately clocking the strat. Dale is aiming to force a high-stakes duel right out the gate, dangling himself as premium bait. But the blonde isn't sweating it. This was exactly the suicide play he predicted. Thrusting his fist into the sky, he bellows a war cry to Saint Madalena, making his legions rampage forward with borderline psychotic rage. Meanwhile, across the dirt, Dale's squad matches their ruthless energy, screaming at everyone to back off from their commander. Both sides smash into each other with everything they've got, while blinding flashes of magic hijack the entire battlefield. The blonde knight finally makes a move. A fast-paced brawl calls for split-second choices, so he commands the first cavalry to fall in line. His master plan: crush the young lord and end this turf war right here, right now. Glaring with pure venom, he vows that today is the day. He flexes the real power of the elites. Radiating absolute killer intent, he sprints straight through the bloodbath. Every swing is a death sentence, dropping bodies left and right. Suddenly, a foot soldier lunges from the chaos, screeching with a spear aimed right at him. The razor-sharp tip grazes mere inches from the blonde's throat. By pure reflex, he deflects the fatal thrust, slicing the grunt in half before the guy even blinks. Fueled by sheer adrenaline, he bulldozes forward, but after dropping a massive pile of enemies, his muscles start screaming, and a creeping sense of dread washes over him. The vibes are completely off, even as he pushes back the rival elites. Crushed by pure overwhelming force, the Night Raven Order retreats way too easily. This elite black cavalry shouldn't be folding like cheap lawn chairs. That creeping sense of dread refuses to fade. Suddenly a scout sprints over breathless, dropping absolute bombshell news. Baron Parker's left flank is getting absolutely shredded. They're being wiped off the map. Across the blood-soaked dirt, bodies. Greenbelt's forces are straight up weaponizing Aura Parker's defenses are shattering like glass, and the surviving grunts are desperately begging for a call. The commander freezes up. That cocky young enemy's taunt instantly loops in his head, the one about the crushing burden landing squarely on the shoulders of a totally useless heir. Another frantic runner arrives proposing a bailout. Pull the mid and rear horsemen to patch up the bleeding left wing. The response: instant snap. Pissed off, the blonde commander literally barks at everyone to shut the hell up. He yanks the rear guard under his direct control, but flips the script entirely. His crazy new play: smash through the right flank. and carve a bloody path straight to the actual prize, the opposing teen general himself. One massive issue, though. Dale is already marching the rear line onto the battlefield. The whole board just got messy. Jamming more units in kills their speed, while the left wing bleeds out faster by the second. But the dice have been rolled. Blinded by a toxic obsession to clutch this win, the blonde totally ghosts his dying men. The enemy's jaws start snapping shut, and the scouts are practically crying for a fallback. Crickets. The commander insists it's just not time yet, but when he glances over his shoulder, he spots the puppet master pulling the strings. Dale is standing right there, flashing the smug grin of a dude who already checkmated him. That deadpan stare throws gasoline on Philip's rage. He hoists his blade high and screams for his riders. The clueless grunts, completely lost in the chaos, frantically scream for direction. Philip just squeezes his eyes shut, tuning them out. Invoking the sacred name of Saint Magdalena, he bellows out a fanatic battle cry, begging for divine armor, absolute victory, and the holy mercy of the sister goddesses. The second his eyes snap back open, they are burning with unhinged psychopathic hate. It's do or die. From this very second, they are tearing through the enemy meat grinder to rip off the opposing general's head. Roaring like a maniac, he orders a full-throttle charge, swords drawn, fully ready to embrace death. Milvis's goons stampede toward Dale, playing exactly into the kid's hands. The blonde's flankers pop out from the shadows, trying to snap the trap shut. Dale doesn't even blink. He knows panic absolutely nukes critical thinking, and right now, there is zero room for error. Flexing a razor-sharp smirk, he mocks the chasers, asking if these guys have seriously never seen magic before. A split second later, he snipes a brutal ice arrow through the howling wind. It blasts a warhorse right in the chest, folding the beast instantly, and violently slamming the rider's skull into the dirt. The blonde's jaw practically hits the floor. Nailing a full sprint target with aimbot-level accuracy isn't exactly a daily occurrence, and he instantly knows he's outclassed. Then Dale drops the hammer. A massive, jagged glacier erupts from the earth, dead-ending the enemy push. The attackers pump the brakes completely, mind-blown by the frozen barricade. Giving zero time to process Dale's brutal command, shakes the field. Advance. His squads instantly lock in, hurling themselves forward with absolutely zero hesitation, screaming they'll die for the cause, transforming into living meat shields for their young lord. The opposition's front line instantly melts, dropping bodies left and right. Back across the chaos, the blonde commander clutches his head, utterly shell-shocked. It hits him way too late. He just walked straight into a death trap. The play was never a quick knockout. It was designed to quarantine, suffocate, and completely shatter his ranks, and he swallowed the bait whole. His vanguard is mangled into a chaotic, messy knot. Backed into a corner, he says screw it, and doubles down on the assault. If he can just bulldoze his way past the meat grinder, maybe, just maybe, he can clutch the ultimate comeback. Screaming his lungs out, he shatters the ice wall and finally locks eyes with his prey. He yanks his greatsword high, fully planning to execute the kid on the spot. But staring back at him, not an ounce of fear, just an icy, unsettling grin. A deafening boom echoes, followed by dead silence. As the dust clears, the finale is completely brutal. The blonde is forced to his knees, while his broken survivors instantly surrender. The entire slaughterhouse belongs to the teenage mastermind. That old-school hype about Aura Knights being invincible gods, totally debunked. The core strategy they worshipped as their ultimate flex just became their fatal flaw. Dale basically had their entire playbook memorized. Every swing, every rotation completely downloaded from his past life. Back when the very guy mentoring him used to boss those exact units around. Suddenly a runner stumbles in gasping for air. The left wing has officially collapsed, and Commander Baron Parker has been bagged. The blonde commander is still glitching out, demanding to know if this whole nightmare was orchestrated from minute one. Dale just shrugs it off with absolute ice, stating the battlefield is just chaotic by nature. You can't predict every variable, but digging your own grave is totally optional. Then Dale drops the ultimate ultimatum. Anyone who wants to breathe tomorrow better drop to their knees and buy their life back with some gold. The opposing troops instantly lose their minds. They roar that they'd rather catch a blade than bow down. But a sharp snap echoes through the air, and a soldier flatlines on the spot. A javelin is spiked dead center through his chest. The message, crystal clear. Dale locks eyes with the blonde and drops the final question. How is he going to play this? The battlefield falls dead silent for a few agonizing seconds. Slowly, the commander bows his head, officially tapping out. Choking down his massive ego, he mutters that he has zero regrets about throwing his life away. But he's got to warn his crew this kid is an absolute menace. Screaming at the top of his lungs, he orders his entire squad to hit the dirt. Even while waving the white flag, he still demands VIP prisoner treatment, like a textbook Imperial Knight. Dale just soaks it all in. Seeing his ops groveling in the mud, he realizes there's no point in trolling them anymore. Still, a wicked smirk creeps across his face before he drops the verdict. Nah, nobody is making it out alive. With dead eyes, he casually orders a complete wipeout. Even his own Nightcrow heavy hitters are shook, totally expecting standard Imperial mercy. Normally you bag the hostages and cash in on the ransom. But the young lord's tone was ice cold, shutting down any room for debate. Out here, his word is absolute law, and nobody dares to test it. Out of everyone standing there, one guy was basically speedrunning his own funeral. Seeing red, the blonde decides throwing hands is better than begging, and leaps up for a counterattack. But he's way too slow. A cold steel blade guts him in a flash, and a barrage of spears pins him down before he can even close the gap. Dale steps up and whispers right into his ear. Voice freezing over, he asks if Lord Milvis remembers exactly how Dale died. The memories of that brutal night flood our main character's brain. That traumatic scene is scarred into his soul forever. The cold steel shoved right into his back, while a shadow just stood there, watching him bleed out. It was this very guy, flexing at the execution of the chained hero, holding his severed head. Dale spits the question out again. Pure panic shatters the blonde's smug face. It totally clicks, but before he can even flinch, a pitch-black aura swallows them whole. He realizes way too late that this kid is a walking ghost. The shadows lock him down like superglue, and his entire body is hijacked before he can even throw a punch. Flashing a twisted grin, he drops his final word. Yes. Dale sucks in a deep breath, riding a high of relief he hasn't felt in ages. Cut to the other side of the war zone. The body count just keeps climbing. The supreme blonde commander watches his squad get absolutely wiped out. His face goes completely pale in shock. By the time the harsh reality kicks in, it's already game over. The right flank got instantly demolished. Sir Milvis and the elite Aura squad are totally packed up, and the left side caved in ages ago. Now the shadowy cavalry is boxing in the core squad. Inside the shattered commander's head, all he sees is that kid's psychotic smirk. A panicked grunt screams for orders, but toxic ego takes the wheel. The blonde commander keeps muttering that there's no shot they actually lost. He barks at everyone to keep swinging to hold the line, hyping up that true knights never touch the dirt. His boys freeze up. Charging now is basically a suicide mission. Even so, his next order drips with pure spite. Nobody disobeys the top boss, but the battlefield is already pure anarchy. A hostile shadow flanks him out of nowhere. Philip completely loses it, shrieking for backup. Deep down, he really didn't want to get smoked in this mud. He wanted a legendary finale. Fast forward, the sky bleeds orange as the massacre finally wraps up. The victorious troops pop off in celebration. From minute one, this entire bloodbath played out exactly like young Lord Dale scripted it. Pinned down and trapped, Philip thrashes wildly, screaming to be cut loose. Meanwhile, Dale just stands there, soaking in the silence. It's painfully obvious waving the white flag just isn't in this guy's DNA. Even with his back against the wall, Philip spits pure defiance. He swears that while they might be beaten, their spirits are absolutely uncrushed. Dripping with venom, he sneers that throwing his own men under the bus was just part of the job description. Being the commander meant making the ugly calls. Suddenly the young warrior's hand twitches toward his hilt. In his mind, it's simple: if the war is officially a wrap, there is zero point in keeping him breathing. Pulling a total Hail Mary, Philip demands a one-on-one deathmatch to settle the score once and for all. One of the grunts scoffs at the absolute audacity, but Dale just raises a hand, signaling his crew to let the guy talk. With a wicked, lopsided smirk, Dale takes the bait. But the blonde warrior isn't playing fair. He rips his weapon from its sheath without even waiting for the green light. Jumping the gun, he lunges forward like a rabid dog, desperate to land a cheap shot. Honestly, he had banked his entire survival. He hoists his blade high, roaring at his enemy to meet his maker. But reality hits hard. He doesn't even get close. Out of nowhere, a sinister pitch-black energy erupts from the dirt, dead stopping the strike mid-air. In a split second, Philip's cocky grin shatters into absolute gut-wrenching terror. He crashes into the dirt like a rag doll, violently thrashing and convulsing on the ground. Shrieking and pleading for his life, Dale just stands there, staring. Not a single ounce of pity in his icy glare, just pure, unfiltered disgust. Just like that, the deafening clash of war fades out, replaced by the pathetic wailing of a total coward. Fast forward a bit, majestic trumpets blast through the air, rolling out the red carpet for a VIP. Young Master Dale has returned, dripping in absolute victory. Whispers ripple through the crowd. Word on the street is that this kid completely cornered and wiped the floor with the elite knights of St. Madalena. But hey, not everyone is in a partying mood. A shady figure in a hood steps up, dropping a heavy reality check. "This isn't a time to cheer," he mutters. "So many bodies dropped today, and honestly, the big guy upstairs probably didn't sign off on this bloodbath." The guy spitting these intense words drops his hood, revealing himself as Cardinal Nikolai, from the Church of the Goddess Sistina. He drops a chilling warning. This kid's sword might just as easily slice through his own team without a second thought. Cut to our main guy strolling up to massive oak doors, with Bale matching his stride. Suddenly, a super sweet voice bounces down the hallway, screaming for her big bro. It's Lisa Dale's little sister, looking way more grown up than before. They lock into a huge, heartwarming hug, and Dale cracks a massive, genuine smile, playfully asking if she missed him. Right on cue, Helmet rolls up to give him massive props for crushing his very first battlefield debut. Fingers locked with his little sis. Dale struts into the grand hall. The whole squad is here. His mentor, Sophia Charlotte, and standing tall up by the altar are his parents, beaming with absolute pride. Slapping a hand over his chest in pure respect, the young heir formally steps up to drop his epic victory report on the Duke. Alan nods, looking incredibly hyped, declaring that the whole operation was pulled off flawlessly, and shoots a grateful look to Bale for steering his son right. Helena, flashing the warmest mom smile ever, knows her boy is practically running on fumes after the war zone, so she insists he goes to crash immediately. Dale softly thanks her, his face literally glowing with relief. It feels like a lifetime since he last stepped foot in here, but right now this spot totally hits different. He is finally home.